30 seconds. We'll call the meeting to order, and first on the agenda is State's Attorney.
Morning, Mr. Chair.
Morning.
Mark Vargo, State's Attorney. I want to give the commissioners a bit of an overview of what changes we are facing in the office and what effect they're going to have on the budget that we've requested. I'd like to start with, I think, perhaps the most important one, which is the change in the nature of our civil division. As Commissioner Buskerud is intimately aware, and as all of you, I think, are also aware, 5 years ago we had a civil attorney. And that was it. It was Jay. Before that it was Laura. It was, we've had various ones, but we've basically had one. And then about 5 years ago, we decided that Patrick would move over. He was a criminal FTE, and we started to assign him some additional civil work because it was pretty clear to us that when we had put more time into civil at the front end, we were actually doing some good things and saving some money for the county on the back end. And that has grown to the point that realistically, a full second civil person is absolutely necessary. Kinsley has been doing about half to 3/4 civil, depending on the day, depending on the week. But the kind of stark contrast of what will be happening next week when Jay's out after surgery is kind of a reminder that we don't really have backup there. We don't have enough people that when somebody's out, either vacation or in a medical emergency, that we've got the ability to kind of adjust and still give all of the various agencies the assistance that they need. That is coupled with, and the one FTE that we are requesting additionally, relates to the fact that our abuse and neglect calendar is going to change as well. If the federal case holds up, and we don't know that for sure, but it has been issued as an opinion, that abuse and neglect attorney is going to be much more of an on-call attorney, less capable of being in the office, helping out with juveniles, helping out with civil, doing things, because she'll never know when she's going to be called over to court on an abuse and neglect proceeding. That ICWA case is going to change some of the nature of how we practice, and to a degree, I think it is going to require us to have additional time devoted to that division. Similarly, Senate Bill 73 also is going to change the nature of our juvenile prosecution. We hope to have fewer juvenile prosecutions, but we're going to take a much more active role in the beginning stages. We're going to be dealing with situations where we have to increase the diversion. We have to deal with kids on the citation system that we're being asked to help create. And so ultimately, between those three things, the civil division, the abuse and neglect calendar, and the juvenile calendar, we're asking for an FTE that we would conceptually give to that group, our fourth Ford group as we think of it, to allow for a little more overlap, a little more cross-training, and a little bit of backup when people are ill or gone for whatever other reason. On the criminal side, we're facing some of the same issues that we've been facing. Last year I gave you a very detailed kind of description of where our volume has gone. I will tell you that it has not improved. In the last year, Rapid City Police Department alone reports a 19% increase in our felony drug offenses. That's absolutely consistent with what we're seeing. We saw a rise in sex offenses. I don't want to give you a number there because they changed the mechanism by which they track it, so it's hard to compare apples to apples, and I don't want to mislead you. But if you look at their overall crimes against persons, it's up approximately 70% over between 2013 and 2014. So that counts misdemeanors, that counts felonies, but those are obviously the cases that take the most time, that take the most effort, take some dedicated and experienced staff. DUI numbers rose 10% again, or 9% just in the last year between 2013 and 2014. But another thing that has changed within the criminal division that I think the commission needs to be aware of is the nature of our practice. It is not the same as when I was a baby prosecutor. And I showed up and they basically said, here's some files, go to court. Neither the judges nor the community, I think, would put up with that any longer. And we are doing things more actively on the front end. Our DUI court takes 40 people. It's a great program. We like to think it keeps people from coming back, and that means that we have fewer people that get hurt. We have people that become productive members of our society instead of just being in and out of jail routinely. But when 40 people go into a program for 18 months, and that attorney is dealing with those 40 people once a week, spending basically 1 day a week dealing with those 40 people, that's a huge change to his caseload without a whole lot of necessarily numerical outcomes. We're participating in it because we think it's ultimately good for the community. But we are an investment into it, and ultimately, again, investment is the key word. The Veterans Court that is coming on is going to be very similar. Our drug court, as it expands, we've been kind of lucky. We've been piggybacking on Meade County largely, and we only send somebody every 2 or 3 months to drug court. But that's going to change as we hopefully have a full drug court of our own. The juvenile diversion that I just mentioned. The other thing that I would ask the board to be cognizant of are the changes in the system. We're going to have an 8th judge. Judge Fifley will be coming on, and then that is Judge Jane Fifley. And then we will have another judge hired, presumably by the end of the year. That makes for, unfortunately, inefficiencies in court calendars. I think all of you understand why it is important that individual attorneys on most hearings cover their own things. When we do arraignments and whatnot, we seek economies of scale. But it's not very useful to send an attorney over to a status hearing who says, I don't know, Judge, it's not my case. So you end up having, I want to send the right people. We try to send as many as we can, but obviously the more judges you have, unless the judges change the nature of their business, that's going to be something that we have to deal with. The changes in public defender's office. This commission has increased the number of attorneys over there. You won't be surprised to hear that there's an echo. That comes with additional motions, additional experts, additional things that go on with those cases. And again, it changes the nature of the practice more than anything else. And I don't want to speak to anybody else's budget, but I'll remind you that we do, I think there were 371 cases last year that the Attorney General's office handled on the prosecution side. If you compare just the cases handled by the State's Attorney's Office and just the cases handled by the Public Defender's Office, they cover 55% of the misdemeanors, or excuse me, 55% of the felonies and 18% of the misdemeanors. So we're dealing with not just the Public Defender's Office, but again, a changing standard and practice of law from the private bar. And that counts for 45% of our felonies and up to 82. Some of the misdemeanors are unrepresented, but a significant amount of the contentious misdemeanors are obviously private counsel. Our location has made us unfortunately less efficient. I love the building you bought us. It is, as a space, it is great. I think it was well planned and designed. It has really worked well for us, but it's further away. And people who have half an hour between hearings no longer come back to their office because it wouldn't make sense. And so we have some inefficiencies that have happened there. To give you a snapshot again on the mental side, because this feeds in not only to our mentals and what we cover in the morning, but also to our mental illness defenses, which are some of, again, of the most contentious and difficult cases that we deal with. We had 1,017 mental hearings in 2004. In 2014, we had 1,732, a 60% increase over a course of a decade. So that reflects what we are dealing with as a reality. And that's one of the reasons location actually comes, that change in practice comes back to it. So what I'm ultimately asking for that I think are new to the commission this year, and I'm certainly willing to answer questions for anyone on any of the aspects of our budget, is an FTE that we would place into the civil and juvenile division, an FTE that we would place into the criminal felony division, and an FTE, a secretarial FTE, because realistically, when you have attorneys, secretaries kind of have to follow along, or things don't get done and you're paying an attorney to do something that you should be paying a secretary to do. It's a false economy, in my opinion, when you understaff yourself. The other thing that is fairly new that I think the commission may want to take a look at, or that I'd like to explain at least, is the request for a stipend on the phones. We included a provision that we will provide $50 a month? $50 a month to our attorneys for smartphones toward their plan. Now, my original thought had been that the county should simply get phones for them. There's some advantages to having a business account, unlimited data, et cetera, et cetera. Russ was supportive of the idea of a stipend. He feels that that works better for the county in the long run. We don't get locked in, and he thinks the day is coming fairly quickly where the business plans will also have limits on data, and then we end up paying for lots of data, and we have to tell people what they can watch on their phones and whether they can do Netflix, and he said it's probably simpler and easier. But I will tell you that it is absolutely every day that I'm getting an email from somebody who's in court with a question. I am getting something where we need a file immediately. People are checking on things to advise a court on a question that maybe they hadn't anticipated. And again, part of it is related to the fact that we're a little further away. Time was we might have just ran somebody over and it would have been 3 minutes between, portal to portal. Now it's more like 10. And I know that doesn't sound like much, but when you repeat it 4 or 5 times a day, it is a fairly significant amount of time that we end up spending in transit. So I am asking the commission to authorize that. That way we can simply say, this is what the county is putting into it. That is not going to be anything where you're going to have to, you're not going to lose money at that point. Using your personal phone for office things and looking things up for the office, opening documents on your phone, that should more than cover them, and I think is a fair amount to contribute toward that. And so that's one of the changes. Some of the other changes that you'll see, we've had some reductions in overall professional services and fees. Trying to think of the other ones that I wanted to make sure you hit. I think those are it in terms of actually wanting to make sure that you understood. So I guess at this point, it might be best if I simply stood for questions on individual budget items or from individual commissioners.
Any questions for Mark?
Mr. Chair, I'm going to tease you, Mark. Did you put in your equipment a little four-wheeler?
I did not. I would like to, but when I do, I will bring it to your direct attention.
It's been a joke, but not so
No,
much
not-
a joke.
It really isn't, and honestly, though I didn't put it in this year, but largely because I don't know where I would keep it.
Sure.
And it doesn't really function unless I can keep it somewhere inside here and somewhere inside when it's at the courthouse. But we lost a fair amount of productivity out of one of our attorneys who at the latter stages of pregnancy was able to work, but not able to walk back and forth. And so we could only use her basically for office duty, which as a misdemeanor attorney, most of your duties are in court. And so she could only really go over to court in the morning and come back, or she could maybe drive over once in the afternoon. But as far as back and forth, when you have to park, it made absolutely no sense. So we lost a little productivity, and we made it work. People stood up for her and helped her out. But I think that that is something that might be worthwhile. Of course, then I don't know what we would do. The other reason I didn't put it in is because I can't quite figure out how it is that we decide who drives it over when. And my guess is people would be going downstairs looking for the four-wheeler and it wouldn't be there. And then they get mad at each other. And
Yeah.
Mark, I appreciate that you put your grants and your other fees and stuff in your budget for 2016 budget on your pages, because that was some of my questions for people yesterday, and I appreciate that you did that on your budget request, so thank you
I think you
very
should
much.
give credit where credit is due.
Thank you, ma'am.
Susan is the one that
Miss Susan,
makes
I
sure
appreciate it.
that
That
kind of
makes
stuff
a
gets in
difference
there.
for overall budget and for me to ask other questions if I need to go back on capital costs, operational costs and stuff. Some of that, I can come back and look at some of that when I'm determining the outcome of the budget, so. Thank
And
you, Ms.
again, I'm
Susan.
trying to make sure that I don't ever mislead you guys, and I don't want to throw sunshine and roses out where there might not be any. But we are going to be asking for an additional grant under the VAWA budget. Part of the concept here is that one of these FTEs, the felony attorney one, might become a domestic violence felony attorney, at least in part. And so we're hoping that we can get some of that money. We didn't put it in the budget because it's not far enough along the stages. And unfortunately, they're on a July timeframe, And so we're just shut out for the July to July of next year. By the time we were looking at it, it was too late to realistically apply.
And I appreciate that, because that's kind of where I was going, or that's where I was going yesterday, because it's nice to know ahead of time instead of be behind the game. And this makes a huge difference when you're figuring budgets on grants and fees and different stuff. So thank you.
Any other questions? We've got another 30 minutes to ask him questions, so.
Well, I am supposed to address the bar here in about 45 minutes, so if we leave a little early, it wouldn't hurt my feelings.
Hope it doesn't rain.
I'm tired of rain. My wife's brand-new car got hit by hail last night.
Yeah, 11:30, my husband woke me up. Dad, is your plants okay? So I'm like, holy cow. So he was taking down plants and it sounded like a hurricane outside. That was just some intense rain, but I wonder how the creeks are doing. I didn't go by there. Usually I'll go by there, and then I like talking with their emergency management, Dustin, and he's just full of information, so that's kind of nice.
Anything else?
Mr. Chair, just maybe in general, do you anticipate some, in the legislature, they've been running through several different pieces of legislation that have made a difference to us as far as how we operate. I mean, you kind of have alluded to that. Do you anticipate anything coming up? Are you hearing they're going to be changing some things? Reason I'm asking that is because we have that summer study on how counties are financed. And if you have some comments on that, I think it would be important to Ron and I.
You've been around long enough, Commissioner Troutman, to know that whether it's DC telling Peer what to do or Peer telling Pennington County what to do, it's not unusual. And I will give you an example of sort of my caution, again, when I present the county a budget. We listed some juvenile diversion fees. We were very cautious in terms of the juvenile diversion incentivization that is supposed to be happening under Senate Bill 73. The Senate Bill 73 originally said that they'd give us $100 for every kid that we divert out of the juvenile court system, but capped that contribution at $100,000 and said if more kids than 1,000 are diverted statewide, that they'll prorate it. And then it made diversion mandatory for certain classes of offenses. So some counties, Minnehaha and Pennington included, probably come fairly close to 1,000 kids total for the year anyway. So we're already basically at the cap. We know we're not going to get $100 a kid. My guess is by the time you take mandatory diversion for all the smaller counties, many of whom have no diversion programs right now, we're going to be looking at far less than that. $30 to $50 might even be optimistic. And so I'm always a little leery when Pierce says, we're going to help you pay for things. Somehow it always seems that gets diverted from one place or another. And so, again, I don't know what that summer study is going to come up with in terms of options, but unless something is sort of earmarked and actually funneled back to the counties, I am worried about what every successive legislature might want to do in terms of saying, hey, we balanced our budget, now it's up to you guys on the local level to balance your budget. Mm-hmm. The fact that we took, a few $100,000 from you, well, sorry about that.
Yeah.
So I guess I'm a little bit of a cynic in that regard.
I think probably county commissioners are too.
I would imagine probably even more so.
Would, one of the things that they have asked, and I think it went out to the department heads a little while ago, but one of the things they were asking is to have some examples like this. That would be great for us to send on. If you wouldn't mind doing a few things like that, I would really appreciate it, Susan.
We could, and I think you get Sheriff Tome next. I know that Senate Bill 70 has also There was some compensation to the counties, but probably not as much as we deserved, given, again, the shift in where services were supposed to be provided.
It's always difficult because the counties have such a wide variety of needs. For 66 counties, we all are so very different. But the large counties, just like the large school districts, really struggle with how they do things financially when they repay us for our work. So, yeah,
And yet we don't really constitute a majority in peer to take
No.
care of that.
that's really true. Okay, thanks. That'll be great to have that information.
Is there any, I haven't heard it, is there any talk about resurrecting the liquor tax concept?
You know, my understanding of this, and Ron, you help me with this, but my understanding is that it's to just research how the sources come in and how the state asks for the counties to provide services and provides little or no funding. But I don't think there is a sales tax resolution that's being considered by the State County Commission, but I don't know, Ron, have you heard liquor tax?
I haven't. I don't know what happened to the Rapid City's proposal for a liquor tax. I suppose it, in the legislature, met with the same one that we've always done, and that's doesn't go anywhere. They just have a strong lobby there, and it's hard to buck that.
Strong lobby and the best parties.
And always the best parties.
I suppose that's a good.
And I don't think that's ever going to go anywhere. Sales tax, that's even deader, let's put it that way.
Yeah,
I mean,
The only thing deader than a sales tax is an income tax, and
yeah,
so.
right at the moment. I mean, our governor, the present one, the past one, has said their philosophy is sales tax is for the state and the cities, not the counties. And they don't want to give it to the counties because they need, in case in the future they need to raise it, they want the room to raise it. If they give it to us,
it would limit that, yeah.
it makes no sense to me because you go to any other state and see what you pay in sales tax, but.
And you should see their contingency budgets.
Well, and I don't know, I personally have an affection for those, and I understand that some people view all fees as taxes and taxes as fees, and it's just nomenclature. But the bottom line is, people who use more of a system, I think, could contribute more to it. I have some, to a certain extent, gas taxes and wheel taxes make sense to me, because if I have more cars, I'm using it more than somebody who only has one. If I drive more miles, I pay more gas tax. I'm using the roads more. But the liquor tax has never quite caught on to that theory of life. If we looked at my budget, if you could magically wave a wand and make alcohol not illegal, because that would just triple our caseload, but make it disappear, yeah, I think it would be absolutely astounding how much difference there would be in terms of criminal activity. The number of cases that we have that are not drug and alcohol related are incredibly limited. But
They don't buy the argument. It is a quarter a drink. Okay, man, everyone in the state will quit drinking. Come on, you gotta be kidding me. You go down the main street and go to the first 5 bars you come to, and there's at least 5 of them, and they'll all be charging a different price, a quarter or 50-cent difference, and no one pays any attention to it.
that's exactly right. I bartended all through college and law school, and I will tell you, the number of times that I was asked the price of a beer before I served it was 0.
Negligible, no.
And your evidence is hearsay, not personal research.
Absolutely.
My evidence is personal but anecdotal. I will admit it's anecdotal.
Yeah.
We don't give it too much.
Well, if there is anything that comes up in terms of questions or clarifications on specific issues, certainly touch base with us and we can provide that in written form. Or I can talk to the commission at another time, but
Thanks.
anything else?
Thank you.
All right, thank you all.
Have a good day.
Mark?
At this point, I'm going to have to second that. Thank you, Ms. Susan.
Is tomorrow the day, Jay?
What's that?
Tomorrow?
Day.
I can't wait.
Can't wait for a surgery?
A little anxious about her first trip to Pier being all by her lonesome, but she's gonna do fine.
Yep.
Laura will be there to help her, and Jay promises to be available by conference call.
I might have to work with Russ today and make sure I can get go.
Full confidence in Kinsley.
Well, good luck tomorrow.
Thank you.
Okay, we're kind of ahead of schedule.
If it's acceptable to the board, Russ is here and ready.
Okay,
You guys want 20 minutes
IT.
from him?
so let's see. We can go ahead with IT.
Mr. IT? Sounds like Mr. ET. Are you not ET? You're IT.
IT, good morning. Russ Tinsvold, IT Director. So I just was here observing, but if you want to squeeze this in, I think this is a pretty quick one.
Sure.
All right, so I didn't watch anybody else's, so I'm not sure how you've been proceeding. If you want a little narrative on the front, if you want a lot of narrative, I can certainly do that. Are you guys discussing the long-term plans at the same time? Okay. So really, my long-term plan, my long-range plan that I provided was really chock full of what we've done the last 3 years, because we've been playing catch-up for the last 3 years and because it was a huge project for us to get into this building. But a lot of what we've been doing is just trying to get things on a replacement cycle. So we've been purging out a lot of old equipment over the last 3 years and putting plans in place of how often the equipment, whether it's computers or servers or other things, get replaced in the future. So honestly, once we get to the point where things are pretty stable, and they're quite stable now, but once we get into that cycle over the next couple of years, then my long-range plan is keep fixing stuff that breaks every day, keep helping departments to find technology to improve their efficiencies within their department, and then on a schedule, replace aging equipment. And so, in a sense, we will become a lot like buildings and grounds. That's what they do. I mean, we're almost like a utility. So that's the future of IT. That part of it, and then helping departments to go out and find technology to help them. So there's nothing in here that I can put that says we're gonna do some fantastic over-the-top thing 2 years from now, because that's not the plan. The plan is just get a stable system that when you turn these systems on, they just work. When you go to check your email, it just works. When we have an emergency, everything still works. So my long range is kind of boring. But if you look at the last 3 years, we've done a lot of awesome stuff to get us to this point. So, any questions about that before I kind of dive into the money part for next year?
Aren't you looking for boring after everything we've gone through to make it updated?
In one sense I am, but in the other sense, there's always cool stuff we can do.
Yeah.
One of the things that I may likely, Holly and I may bring to you in another year or 2 or 3 is a system where we can better provide these meetings and all public meetings to the public through the internet. So right now, we're doing that on a very frugal budget. We're using YouTube because it's free. Takes a little bit more human time to put it out there, but we're not paying $20,000 a year for it. That, for example, is one of the technologies that the price is coming down over time. Another 2 or 3 years, and we might be able to get a much better system in place for a lot less than it would cost today. So that stuff is exciting. Stuff breaking every day, no, I'm looking for the boredom in that, to be the Maytag repairman of the county. So going into next year, I'm happy to tell you that we don't need more money, but I need to explain that a little bit. I would have had to ask for a little bit more money because of COLA and merit increases, or if those happen. But the reason that my budget doesn't go up is because we shifted a small amount of money, which was just over $11,000, out of the IT budget and split amongst other departments for them to absorb. And what that was is that's a piece of software called File Director, and that's our document management system. And so let's say if this needs to be kept somewhere in the Register of Deeds office, they can file it in and it's kept electronically instead of in a file cabinet. Well, that's kind of a global system and it's used by multiple departments. But over time, that system grows because there's more information going into it and more departments jump on board to use that system because it's a shared system. But that wasn't planned out very well when we first purchased it, and that predates me at the county. Initially, IT bought it, and we paid the cost, but the costs keep going up and they're gonna continue to go up. So it made more sense to just push that back out to the departments. Those that use it pay their fair share of it, and if IT should use it in the future, we'll pay our fair share. So we dropped $11,000 out. That gets dispersed amongst the departments that use it, and then that absorbed most of the increase for COLA and merit. The other numbers that you see on here are really me continuing to try to refine which categories I'm going to use, whether it's, because things get blurred in our world between IT equipment and software. You buy a piece of equipment, but it needs software. So which category? So some of those things I'm still pushing money around, so that's why you see some of these almost dramatic looking shifts between one category and the next. I'm getting better at that, but that's a process. We do have a total of 13 FTEs. In the time that I've been here, we've only had 12 filled. I would continue to ask that you let me keep that 13th FTE because things are still constantly in flux that I'm not 100% sure that we're not gonna need it over the next year or two. And it's a lot harder for me to come back in the future and ask for a new FTE than it is for me to ask to keep this one and just keep it empty as long as I can. We have an extremely lean personnel group in the IT, in that we have 12 people, but 4 of those people are software developers, which means that's 8 people. And to put it in perspective, we have about the same number of employees as the city of Rapid City, and they have more than double that number of people. Well, no, they probably have close to double our 8 to serve the same number of users. Now, they have some things like the Civic Center and the airport, but we have a jail. So there's some things that kind of, at jail, it runs 24/7. So it's kind of offset, but the reason I mention that is having 12 people and 4 of them are software developers, which the city doesn't do any software development. That's a very, very lean group of IT to run this organization. So I'd like to keep that 13th FTE, and my goal is to keep it empty and be able to do everything that we need to do with the fewest number of people possible. The other thing I'll point out here is that we do have this $20,000 a year reserve, and that's set up the way that the auditor's office likes it to be set up, where we are budgeting $20,000 in our budget so that you see it, but at the end of every year, if that $20,000 has not had to be absorbed for some other unexpected reason, it gets pushed off into an IT equipment fund. The goal of that fund is every 5 to 7 years, we expect that we're going to have some new IT thing, whether it's a replacement of our entire data storage system or something big like that, that might be the $150,000 to $200,000 range. We can use that reserve fund for it. And so right now, I think it has about 50-some thousand dollars in it. So that's what the 20,000 is, and that's worked well the last couple of years. I think that's all of the things that I was going to point out to you, so I'll stand for questions.
Any questions for Russ?
Yes, I would just do a thank you to Rush. I went to a department head meeting, talked about the phone systems, concerns not of just me, but other commissioners about the customer service that we could do through the phone systems for Pennington County, and Russ and Holly worked together to accomplish and work out a system with no cost to the taxpayers on that. So thank you, Russ, and thank you to the department heads and Holly for bringing that forth, because I think it's huge for Pennington County on customer service, and I think some other commissioners that I had worked with appreciate it as well. So thank you, Russ, for listening and making things in Pennington County better, just without costing anything and knowing how to get it done. So I appreciate that, Russ.
Anything else?
Mr. Chair, if I might, the reserve accumulation, you got 50,000 now, and
I think plus or minus, maybe it might be around 53,000, I'm thinking.
you've got some end of accumulation before you stop, or are you just going to keep going?
You know what, I hadn't thought that far ahead. That I like that scenario, that we never need to use it. I could envision that if it got to, let's say, $200,000, we would stop contributing to it. I don't foresee that happening, but if it gets to that point, I think that would be a good discussion to have.
The other question I have is on 425 repairs and maintenance, the 29,000 last year to 700 this year, is that just a matter of classifications?
It is.
And I can appreciate that, having to mess with IRS. Thank you.
Any other questions for Russ? Your normal, efficient presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, and thanks for squeezing it in. I hope that'll help you to have a longer lunch hour.
Some of us don't.
Okay, we're still ahead of schedule, but Sheriff Tom, are you folks ready? Yep. Okay, we'll go ahead then with the law enforcement budget.
Sorry, I'm just putting their stuff up here.
Didn't I just see you at a meeting? I forgot your name, Robin, I think.
Oh, okay, thank you. Thank you.
You can just open it up and click start and it'll go right out.
Is that the clicker?
Looks like a clicker.
Does this advance? Yep.
It works.
Friday nights, always called for service. Did you see these?
Whenever you're ready.
Good morning, Kevin Tone, Pennington County Sheriff. And if with the chairman's permission, what I'd like to do is spend about 10 minutes and just run through this PowerPoint, give you some background as to our budget and our operation, and then, of course, certainly stand for any questions you may have, and have a number of staff people with us here to respect for your time. So if you have questions, we can hopefully answer them on the spot, and then get as much taken care of today as possible while we're here. So if you remember last year, we had National Sheriff Association coming to do a staffing study for the sheriff's office. And last year you worked with us in, trying to achieve some of the goals within the staffing study. And I just wanted to remind the commission that, we're still working towards that goal, understanding that it's within whatever constraints of the budget. But under the National Sheriff Association and their recommendations, they recommended that we added 42 positions, within the sheriff's office, and they broke them down this way. Our own analysis, taking their numbers and looking at kind of a local factor, if you will, we thought we could get by with about 28 positions over about a 3-year period is what they had recommended. And just to remind the commission, last year, we were able to add about 13 of those positions into the sheriff's office. One of the biggest drains that they identified, on our staffing was the transport division. And I'll spend some time talking about transport and the number of people we transport, not just across the state, but within the city of Rapid City to medical appointments, et cetera. And when we had them come do the staffing study, the focus was really twofold. First was community response. How are we responding to calls for service in the community? And I have a slide that will talk about our response times to citizens' requests for service or assistance. And the other one's deputy safety. Excuse me, I have a cough drop because I got a cold and or allergies or something. So the deputy safety perspective is, frankly, there's just more loons out there than there was 10 years ago. And oftentimes we have multiple deputies responding to a call when historically you might have had one deputy responding to a call for service. So that's a factor in when we look at our staffing levels and our response to community service. This is calls for service, and I could spend a lot of time on these, but just to give you a peek at them, and I'll certainly be available again for questions or individually if you want to follow up on any of these. The deputy-initiated calls for service you actually see are down. That's like traffic stops, things of that nature, proactive patrol. And then the public-initiated calls for service continue to go up. And again, it's taking longer to take care of a call for service, and oftentimes taking more than one deputy to take care of a call for service. So that contributes to, these numbers. And overall, you see about a 4.6% increase. And this is just some data that we use when we look at, got a little echo here, when we look at how we staff our shifts. I don't know why we're getting echo out of this, but how we staff our shifts, do you have how many people on at any given time, days of the week, that sort of stuff. And so we have an analyst that the police department actually employs, but we share her services, and she put these numbers together for us. So it's just part of our strategic policing when we look at how we service the citizens of Pennington County. And it's just a different temporal analysis. And these do not include transport. Transport, skews the numbers because most of those are during the daytime. But again, it's just something we use as a tool to look at how we use our resources within the sheriff's office. What are our busiest times? And you can see, of course, Friday in the evening is busy. And then if you look at the hotspot, that's our busiest times, the red. Then if you throw in, if you look at this one, public and deputy initiated calls for service, and this one does include transport calls for service. And you can see the most active days of the week are Friday and Wednesday. And again, if you look at the temporal analysis, the red dot becomes during the day because that's when we're taking people to court, taking people on the trip east, et cetera. So the bubble kind of shifts, but it's a little distorted because transport, well, it's part of the sheriff's office as a separate function from those deputies out on patrol responding to calls for service. And again, in the staffing study, what they identified was we were pulling too many people off patrol to assist transport because we were behind in transport. And so I put less deputies on the road at any given time. And this is one thing we were concerned about was, our response times. And I said this last year, and I'll say it again here. Obviously, if you live in rural Pennington County, you know it's going to take fire, EMS, law enforcement longer to get there, but just by virtue of the geographics. If we have more people out patrolling in the areas, obviously the response time will be shorter because they'll be out actively in their patrol cars ready to respond. But our calls for service has gone up. If you look from 2008, 2014, it's gone up 55.4%. And if you're an accident victim or a domestic violence victim or some other victim of a crime, the longer it takes us to get there, the more traumatic it is for you or the additional damage that can occur. And just individually looked at some calls for response time up here, calls, accidents, accident with injury, accident, unknown injury, assault with a weapon, burglary, kind of goes across just a select few different examples of the time it takes on our average response time. Now I jump into some of the programs. 24/7, it's been around for a number of years now. Really 24/7, think of it as a jail diversion program. And it's been validated by the Rand Corp did a study on it and showed it had a positive impact on DUIs and domestic violence. They're doing a follow-up study now looking deeper into 24/7 as to its effectiveness. And the unique thing about 24/7 is 100% offender pay. No tax dollars go to support it. So all the staff, the rent for the facility, the equipment, excuse me, is all 100% offender pay. It's a dollar in the morning, $1 at night to blow in the PBT tube, and then we do urinalysis testing as well, and there's a separate fee for that. And you can see the pass rate is actually very high, 99, 98% pass rate. So it's a good thing for our community, and I think we got this grant for the MacArthur Foundation, and they're going to look at pretrial. This is used in a lot of pretrial cases now. It's also used, post-conviction as a condition of, probation. And I think we'll look into this further with the MacArthur Foundation grant to see if there's, things we can do different, or if it's as good as it's going to get, or whatever. Can we use this differently in pretrial release than we are currently? And I think they'll find that we're probably on the cutting edge on this when it comes to pretrial diversion in terms of using a program like this. And we also use the 24/7 site to support our electronic monitoring. If you remember, about 18 months ago, we went to electronic monitoring, which is a bracelet for people on work release. And so instead of in the jail, they're out on work release. And every morning, if you're on work release, every morning you have to get up, phone into an automated system, and see if it's your turn to do a UA or not that day. So every day you're reminded that you may have to do a UA, so it's accountability. And if it is your day to do a UA, and you can set it in the system how many times you want that person randomly UA'd during the month, they show up the 24/7 site and do their UA. So we use this to support other functions within the sheriff's office and the court system. Coroner cases. A number of years ago, Pennington County chose to combine the office of sheriff and coroner. Frankly, you're seeing more and more counties do that because it makes sense. We're out there working anyway, we're on the street 24/7, so it makes sense. You can see the numbers are dramatic. From 1999 to 2014, the increase in the number of coroner cases. And some of that's a reflection of what's happened with life flight and EMS. You know, they life flight people here from other counties or ground transport them here and they die at the hospital. They were a crash victim in Lawrence County, die here. We end up doing the coroner work. So as they've gotten more efficient, some of that burden has fallen on Pennington County. That attributes for part of the increase. And out of that, we do about 70 autopsies a year, so a little over one a week. We're doing autopsies, and that takes a tremendous amount of time. And the autopsy, of course, would determine the cause of death. And if you look at just the coroner statutes and duty, and in a nutshell, it's a coroner's responsibility to determine cause of death. If they're under a physician's care, and it's not accidental or homicidal, then the physician can do the death certificate. Otherwise, that responsibility falls on to the coroner of the particular county. So this just kind of outlines those duties. We'll talk about the, the jail for a little bit. Again, you can see our average daily population has continued to increase. I guess if there's a silver lining to this, it's what helped get us on the radar with the MacArthur Foundation grant that our jail population is growing, and hopefully they'll have some, we'll identify some solutions as we go through this process the next 6 months. But if you look in 2013, that's where we converted from work release, the electronic monitoring work release in the facility, outside the facility. It used to be $23 a day for a work release inmate to be in our facility. They paid us to be in our facility. Well, we lowered that to $15 a day, and you wear a bracelet and you're outside the facility. So again, the electronic monitoring is 100% offender pay. They're home with their family, they keep their jobs, and it's a higher level of accountability than previously. Before, we'd send you out of the jail, you go do your job, come back 10 hours later. I didn't know where you went during the day, had no idea. Now I know 24/7, where you're at. So it's been a good program. It's something we did locally with the state's attorney, public defender, the courts. We all sat down and just a local collaborative and agreed on a set of rules. It was basically one page and carved them in stone and said, if you violate these, you go to jail, because you have to have kind of all or nothing black and white when it comes to this type of population. That's all they respond to in terms of, give an inch, they take a mile. So we just drew a line in the sand on the rules and said you violate them, you go to jail. So it's been a good program. And it's, again, these are fewer people in our facility and they're out on the street. Instead of less wear and tear in our facility, we're not responsible for additional costs. All those things that go with having people in your facility. We were the first county in the state to do it, by the way, too. A couple others have taken it on since then. Juvenile Services Center. You heard a lot about Senate Bill 73 this last legislative session. I know Commissioner Hadcock is sitting on the Oversight Council or Advisory Council that they established with Senate Bill 73, like they did under Senate Bill 70, the adult criminal justice reforms. Again, Pennington County was ahead of the curve on this. Several years ago, we started JDAI, Juvenile Detention Alternative Initiative. And what that is, that's a philosophy. It's not a program. It's about incarcerating less kids and having kids in your facility that need to be there, not the ones you're mad at, but the ones that need to be there. And what it's done is dramatically reduced our secure population, which presented some challenges from a budget standpoint, a management standpoint, because your cost per kid has gone way up, but you got less kids in your facility. But consequently, what we have is a very hardcore population in our juvenile facility. And again, like I said last year, these aren't kids that have spray painted the park benches. These are, one time we had 4 kids in there for murder last year. These are very hardcore kids. We've had a number of staff assaults already this year. And, a 16-year-old that's 6'4", 280 pounds is a big person. And they're a juvenile, but still a big person, and they can hurt staff and have. So we have a pretty hardcore population in our facility when it comes to the kids that are currently there. But we have less kids in jail, and that's a good thing. And you hear a lot about criminal justice reinvestment. You heard it with, again, Senate Bill 70, the adult reforms, the Public Safety Improvement Act. You're hearing it with Senate Bill 73. This is criminal justice reinvestment at the local level. if you look at our peak in 2008, $1.7 million for security detention costs, and our alternatives was 463. What's an alternative? That's what we've done at JFC with the shelter care that's run by Lutheran Social Services, with a partnership with them. It's the evening reporting center where kids, when they're most at risk, come from school and spend the evening there until they go home, with their parents. A number of alternative programs like that. Home detention, we have electronic monitoring for kids with home detention. What we've done is we've increased our juvenile cost, 463,000, but we still have a net savings from our peak of 1.29 million when we were incarcerating kids at that time. So, it's been a positive thing for Pennington County. There's a lot of data that shows even a kid incarcerated for 24 or 48 hours sets them on a trajectory to more likely be back into the system, at some point in the future. So when we run the reception center, which is run by LSS, we have a risk assessment instrument called Array. They score the kids when they come in. If they don't score a certain threshold, then it's objective. So that way, if the officer's mad because the kid spit in his face or her face, it is an objective instrument that measures whether or not the kid should be in the facility. Probation violations was one of the biggest drivers at the time. The courts were throwing kids in jail for probation violations, or the court service officers were. Well, that's a cost to Pennington County when you do that. And if you're mad at a kid and make them sit for the weekend because you're mad at them, is that really the best use of our facility, and is that where the kid should be? And that's really what happened with JDI. It just made a philosophical shift on how we do business in Pennington County. So I think we're ahead of the curve, Commissioner Hadcock. When you go to the meetings and talk about juveniles, I think you can brag about Pennington County.
I appreciate that. And then Liz Heidelberg had a big part of that in filling me in and Judge Davis to get up to speed on SB 73 and you too, Kevin. So I appreciate all the time you guys have taken to get me up to speed. But just from seeing the philosophy, actually hearing it, seeing it, it's amazing. So I appreciate all the work Pennington County Sheriff's Department has done and JDI and Judge Davis, because you've done an amazing job.
And Judge Davis and I co-chair the steering committee for the JDAI, and then Liz Heidelberger used to work for Pennington County as our JDI coordinator, and then the state started a program and stole her from us, and so they have a statewide program. So we've absorbed that within our ranks now, and we do things very collaborative in this community, and Pennington County and Rapid City are well served by that. I mean, the courts play well with us, all the nonprofits, the other service providers, and the other government entities. We all play well together, and again, I think that's what got us on the radar with the MacArthur Foundation, and frankly, I think that's what's going to push us over the hump to make the final cut of 10. I'm optimistic we'll make that cut of 10, so we'll see.
And I appreciate that, Kevin, and it all takes bottom line team and your department and the other departments work well as a team, so that's been awesome to watch.
Yeah,
So thank you, sir.
On warrants, and I apologize, there's an error on this one under 2014 where it says 1506. That really should be 1411, but I'll get you a corrected page. And the one below it should be 5,351. For some reason, the numbers didn't get transferred, but bottom line, if you look at 2014, felony warrants, we received 1,411, if you look at the corrected number. But if you look at the arrests, we arrested 1,506 felons. So for the first time in a long time, we're starting to go the right direction where we're continuing to arrest, more and more, felons than we're receiving warrants on. And misdemeanors, similar number, but, bottom line, it's still an 8.2% increase. Again, forget the percentages are there because the numbers were wrong, but it's still an 8.2% increase in felony and misdemeanor warrants received in Pennington County. And our warrants division works very closely with the state's attorney's office, excuse me, and dismissing old cases. I was talking to our sergeant in warrants yesterday. He come back from the state attorney's office with a stack of warrants, and you got 8, 10-year-old warrants for a failure to appear, or not a failure to appear, driving under suspension or something from somebody from out of state from 10 years ago. We can get rid of those. Sort the wheat from the chaff, focus on the ones that are more likely to reoffend. The longer somebody's out there with an active warrant, the more likely they are to reoffend and re-victimize other victims. So we take it serious, and especially on the ones that are crimes of violence and more likely to reoffend, and get those picked up so they don't create more victims in our community. And if you look at the bottom on the warrant fees collected, excuse me, the legislature a number of years ago passed put a $25 fee on every warrant served. We have a fairly high collection rate on that, so every warrant served, the offender pays $25, and that's what generates that revenue. Transport, again, I want to reference back to the National Sheriff's Association staffing study. Look at the number of transports, the darker blue or purple is our transports east. That's the bus that we run twice a week that goes to Sioux Falls and back that the other counties participate in. And, the credit goes to Sheriff Holloway. He put that together at the time with the other counties, with Department of Corrections. And that serves, again, it's a good statewide collaborative, serves everybody very well. And the blue, lighter blue number, those are the local transports. That's people we take over to the courthouse, that's people we take to medical appointments, et cetera. And if you combine the two, we moved 16,562 inmates in 2014. That's a lot of inmate movement. And, fortunately, and I'll show you a list of some of the incidents that have occurred during the transports, but we have not had anything catastrophic, if you will, that has occurred with the high volume of inmates that we're moving. So again, I think we do it very well. These are some of the significant incidents that have occurred, and I just want to highlight a couple, because you've probably read through these, you can read through them at your leisure, but like the first one, in May of 2010, you had an inmate actually escape that was in custody when they took him to regional hospital. In January of 14, just down a little bit, we had an inmate attempt to escape up at Suzanne, assaulted the guards, tried to steal a vehicle. We were able to secure the person again and not let him get away. And then go over to the bottom right. These are some interesting numbers, from April 2014 to April 2015, number of physical arrests, and those are over at court services. They call and ask for somebody to be detained or arrested. 483 adults and 65 juveniles that were arrested in the courthouse as a result of them requesting assistance. And then the number below it, again, 93 adults, 103 juveniles, and those are arrests made in individual courtrooms. And one statistic we talked about last year, why security at the courthouse? One national study suggests that workplace violence is 15 times more likely in a judicial setting than in a traditional workplace setting. So 15 times more likely to have violence in a judicial setting, obviously because emotions are high and things like that. So it's an important function that we provide. It just gives you an idea as to some of the incidents that we deal with when transporting people. Staffing, you have the staffing stuff that we sent over, and the staffing stuff is here. I guess, again, I'll save that for the end. If there's questions, we can talk specifically about the divisions as to what was moved where. I'll just point out one thing. You see a lot of changes from 15 to 16. Over the last couple of years, we made a number of changes in the budgets. Remember, legislative audit came in a couple of years ago and said, all the transport revenues and expenses should be under the jail. So we had to do a big shift of expenses and revenues over the jail and shifted some of the FTEs over there. And then a further consolidation of budgets, so it makes the process more streamlined and less individual budgets for the auditor to manage and for us to manage, and it makes sense. You can see where in 15, HIDA grant, school aids, all those under HIDA grant, the school aids on Hill City, Keystone, they've all been rolled up into the law enforcement budget. So that accounts for 14 of those FTEs. It's just a matter of combining the budget. So you'll see some of that as you look at the budgets. It's not all adding staff. And some of the individual budgets, and again, I know you've looked at the budgets, so I won't spend a lot of time in these. What we tried to do is put the budget and then the supporting revenues underneath it, so it was kind of on one page. You can look at it, in a snapshot, and we broke them down, by the various divisions. So you'll have that on both pages. On the search and rescue one, just one point of clarification. It shows 74,000 if you look at the second column, 2015 approved, 16 requested. That 74,000 is made up of 22,000 from the city, 22 from the county of general funds. And then there's 30,000 in there for wildland fire. If they go fight fires and they get reimbursed, then that's revenue there that we capture back into search and rescue. So if we don't get it, we don't spend it. And then so if you look down, the actual tax support, because the Title III search and rescue money, the 20,000, again, that's separate funds, it's not county general funds. It's used for primarily if search and rescue does searches on the national forest. The Title III funds are allowed to reimburse search and rescue and us for our expenses for looking for lost people, for example, or other activities on the Forest Service. And that would account for the other 20,000. So really the tax support is 22,000. It's not 42,000 because the Title III money is not tax support. It's federal funds. And same if you carry that over on both lines. And then on the bottom line, 24/7, we call that tax support, but technically it's not. 24/7's like an enterprise fund or a revolving fund, where it's a standalone fund, where it's, revenue in, revenue out specific to that program, and it flows through the county, but technically it's not tax support. And I need to clarify with Julie if they included that into the levy in terms of the final budget, since we call it tax support, but I'll follow up with her to make sure that's not counted as tax support. So here's the bottom line. There's our proposed budget, proposed revenues, and tax support. One thing that's unique about the Sheriff's Office budget is we're about 41% supported by other revenues. And that's from our contract communities to the jail to 24/7 to serving papers. I mean, there's a wide variety of revenue streams that support that. So let me just break it down for you. There's $708,000 in tax support increase in our budget as it's proposed. I know this is all just proposed at this point. But $550,000 of that's a transfer from Health and Human Services. So that would have showed up in their budget. In fact, Barry had talked about rolling that up to 600. We said, let's leave it at 550, see if we can gain some internal efficiencies. We're spending the money, they were managing the program. Barry and us agreed, if we're spending the money, let us manage the program, and then it'll just make it less confusing. And that's for the costs associated with jail medical, like going out and get medical care, prescriptions, those sorts of things. So that would have been in Barry's budget, but because of that, we transferred it to ours, so it's cost neutral in terms of an increase. So really it brings us to less than 1% increase of actual tax support that we're asking for. And the bottom two numbers are just an example of, if we weren't doing, you said we don't have money to do merit COLA insurance, we're broke, we would actually be saving you about $300,000 with this budget. So what we've done is we've offset the cost of the merit COLA insurance with the other revenues. And just if you look at our 13 and 14 budgets, between the two, we reverted almost $1.8 million. And some of that you agreed to put into the bus reserve and a couple other reserves for us. The rest, stayed in the county general fund to help offset other costs. And most of that is over collected revenues. We're not over budgeting and have a big surplus of dollars left. There's some of that in there. You have salary salvage at the end of the year, things like that. Most of it's over collected revenues. We've been trying to be entrepreneurial where we could. Here's one example. Recently, the North Dakota U.S. Marshal, who's a friend of mine from my days in North Dakota, called and was looking for places for some more Marshal prisoners. All their county jails are full in North Dakota, and they're building more county jails, but they're 18 months, 2 years out. So we currently have 8 North Dakota Marshal prisoners. We'll have 10 here later in the week, and as we can get our staff ramped up, we'll take on more of those, and those are net positive for Pennington County in terms of it generates extra revenue for Pennington County. And right now we're running about 90 South Dakota U.S. Marshals, so you throw out another 10 U.S. Marshals, and I'll do the math. If you had 10 U.S. Marshals at 75 a day, and I think we're gonna bump it to 80 a day here with our new formula, but you're looking at about $273,000 a year in additional revenue. And you got to offset, meals and some extra transport costs and things like that. So, and as an overview of FTEs, if you will, because that's always something the commission likes to talk about, our bottom line FTEs are not changing, but we have written in funding some currently unfunded positions, and I'll identify them for you so you don't have to try and find them in the budget. But in the law enforcement piece, we've written 3 in for a COPS grant. It's a federal grant where it's, we pay 25%, 50%, 75%, then 100% in the 4th year. So it's a tier stepped into our budget over about a 4-year process. Last year we applied for them and didn't get them. So we put them in the budget again this year in hopes that we would get them. one school liaison we added. Douglas School District approached us. We have one school liaison out there currently, but they have so many facilities and so many kids out there that one school liaison can't meet their needs, and they asked for a second, so they offset part of that cost, and we pay part of the cost. And we're adding a mechanic into our shop at 4th and St. Joe. And again, this is all in these numbers that you're looking at. But if you count all of our vehicles, all of search and rescue's vehicles, so I got the numbers here. There's about 103 vehicles, about 13 trailers, and about 10 ATV type vehicles that they're responsible for servicing. So they reached a point where we need an additional body over there. Then in terms of the jail, again, I want to identify these up front for you. Again, in this budget, 2 nurses. And if you remember, a couple years ago, we had an outside consultant come in and look at our jail medical. Again, we're always trying to figure out the best way to do business, and having somebody else come grade your papers sometimes is the best way to do it. And he made a number of recommendations, and we're still trying to, implement some of those. And excuse me, and part of that is we don't have enough nursing coverage, particularly later in the hours. It still doesn't give us 24/7 coverage, but gives us extended coverage into the evening hours. And I'm sure you've heard this from Barry, but I mean, the population we're serving, more mental health issues and more medical issues than ever before. And again, hopefully, out of this MacArthur Foundation, we can look at some diversions for some of that population so they aren't recycling back through our facilities so much. But 2 nurses, 5 COs, and the 5 COs would be dependent on correctional officers. It would be dependent on if we continue to add, like the North Dakota Marshals prisoners or our South Dakota Marshal numbers grow. So it'd be dependent on the revenues. They'd be, they would fund themselves. And then 1 deputy for transport and 1 transport officer. Again, building on the NSA study where transport's been a black hole to the rest of the Sheriff's Office Patrol Division, trying to get that to be a standalone so patrol can be a standalone and respond to calls for service. So with that, did I miss anything? Stand for any questions you may have. And I know this, I understand this is all proposed at this point. I know that we have a daunting task ahead of us in terms of the budget and potential expenses and revenues and how to sort that all out. And I guess I hope the commission will just hear everybody's requests and understand our needs, and then as we get down to the nuts and bolts of how much money there is, I guess, figure out what needs to be cut or what survives or what doesn't. But everything I mentioned is in those numbers there in front of you.
Any questions for Sheriff Tome?
You have to bring it up here, though.
All right.
First of all, I'm very proud of what the sheriff has done. I think he's well-liked and does everything that he should be doing. He keeps good records, evidently. The only problem I have is motorcycle noise has never been enforced and still is not being enforced. I'd like to read this. All motorcycles sold, licensed, and driven on public highway systems are required to conform with the U.S. EPA standards of acceptable noise emissions. The Code of the Federal Regulations 40 CFR 205 Subpart D establishes 80 dB or decibels, noise decibels, as acceptable, meaning no legally equipped motorcycle should be audible beyond 75 feet to include startup and idle. In support of these federal mandates, South Dakota codified laws 32-15-17 delineates excessive or unusual vehicle muffler noise as a Class 2 misdemeanor. An EPA label matching program was designated as a regulatory measure for the states and municipalities to control motorcycle and illegal automobile and pickup muffler noises. If an EPA stamp is missing from the individual's motorcycle muffler, then EPA mandates CFRs and SDLCL excessive muffler noise is being intentionally violated. The American Motorist Association states law enforcement agencies should fairly and consistently enforce appropriate laws and ordinances against excessive vehicle noise. Harley-Davidson Motorcycle Division puts it thusly: it is time to pipe down. This festering, excessive, and illegal noise problem continues to plague law-abiding citizens' rights. These immature show-offs purposely produce thunderous, loud, and deafening noises at all hours with their illegally equipped motorcycles, thereby exhibiting a bullying, in-your-face, onward attitude. It's time to stop. Now, this was written by a guy named Ernest Foss Jr. of Blackhawk. Probably a year or two ago, it was in the paper under the yours column. I'd like to give a copy of this to all the commissioners if I could, and the sheriff can have one. And I also brought in a decibel meter I bought, $35. You buy it on the internet from China. You use this in noisy conditions. If you don't need it, noisy, you put this on, windy, I should say. It's well made. You can see and it hooks up to the internet, your computer with a USB cord. It has a software program that displays a graph chart on the screen. It tells the time of day, the decibels. It tells the maximum if you want that. It does everything. It's a fantastic program for $32. And I'd like to see something done on this. This isn't just a sheriff's problem. This is a city problem. It's a state problem. The highway patrol and the city police don't enforce it either. I would bet that if the sheriff were to give us a count of the number of noisy motorcycles he's written tickets on in the last couple of years, I'd be interested to see it.
It's very low.
They're very low, right. So this is what I have. I'd like to pass one of these out to the
Go right
commission,
ahead.
if I may, Lindell.
You bet.
Thanks, Gail.
Exactly what I just spoke, but I wanted to get it on the record, is the reason I spoke.
Well, while you're passing these out, I had a call last night about fireworks. And at our last meeting, we had the first reading of barking dog ordinance. So maybe this is broader than motorcycles, this whole noise thing.
Anyway, that's all I had, but I do commend Kevin on everything else he's done. I think he's done a wonderful job. I'd just like to see something done on the noise deal. And part of it might be up to this commission to force the issue, in other words. We still got a little bit of time before the rally, and it's going to be a thunderous time if we have to put up with it again. I'm gonna use this meter and do some checking at my house, but my house is 200 feet from the highway, and it's unbelievable, the noise. It just, I complained about this 2 years ago. Don Holloway sent a deputy out and talked to me, but about the only thing he seemed to be interested in was the speeding crotch rockets that were going by. That was one of the other complaints. They go by at about 100 miles an hour by our place. We're on a long straightaway, and they just scream. I'm just terrible. But I'm more concerned with the straight noise on the Harleys. The Hondas and the Suzukis and all the rest of them, they purr on by just as nice as can be, and there's no excuse for this. There really isn't. So, thank you.
Gail, did you want to ask about the phone charges, or should I? For the edification of
Yeah, I was gonna Guess I was gonna ask about the phone charges at the jail. My son spent some time in there for a DWI at one time, and I know he had to call collect the only way out.
You have a copy of that?
And the charges, I don't remember what they were, but they were just horrendous per minute at that time. That was 3-4 years ago, I guess, but,
I can give you a copy of this if you'd like,
oh, okay,
and I can explain both these real briefly, if the commission would like.
okay. But I don't think the people that are in there should be paying that kind of rates for phone service to call their families and check on their families and get help to, on their case, I guess you might say. So it's just, that's about all I had. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, can I address both of those?
Yes.
Phone people.
On the exhaust question, Commissioner Fermi asked me this yesterday, and I brought him a copy of the ordinance, and I can follow up with the rest of the commission with a kind of an overview of the ordinance. You know, the South Dakota, or the law, I should say, the South Dakota law doesn't specify a decibel. It uses that term, and you got it in front of you, but I'll use this one. It's the excessive and unusual noise. It's it's kind of hard to define. And we've cited people a handful of times over the last few years. It's not used very often. You know, there's either a tweak needs to be done to the state statute or a county ordinance, maybe that's more specific to decibels. That's something we could talk to the state's attorney's office about. It is a little akin to the fireworks problem, the barking dog problem, maybe more fireworks where it's a little more seasonal with the rally, but you do have motorcycles year round. It's a tough one to tackle, to be honest with you. But I can put some additional information together and forward that to the commission if you'd like, and I guess explore some options. In terms of the phone rates, and again, Commissioner Farabee had asked me about this yesterday, so I pulled the rates, and you got another sheet I gave mine. I'll give it. I borrow this back.
Yeah, you sure can. You bet.
And again, we can make copies for the rest of the commission, but this spells out our local and our intrastate and our interstate rates, and it is expensive. And in terms of revenue, it brings in revenue to the jail of about $510,000 a year. In terms of expenses, it's about $300,000 that we pay to the vendor that provides a phone service. You remember, all the calls except those to legal calls, which aren't charged for your attorney calls, are recorded. So there's a system that records and captures all that, and investigators use it, other people use it. We're constantly using the system. So there's a net positive for Pennington County for $210,000, and then we have to pay our administrative staff to do the work they do on it, et cetera. So, I mean, the question for the commission is, if you want to lower the phone rates, then you got to put up tax dollars to offset the increase. And I will tell you that on a national level, the FCC is looking at this issue, both on prison phone calls and on state phone, or local jail phone calls, in-state and out-of-state, and they feel the costs are too high. So FCC is proposing some rule changes. The National Sheriff's Association has opposed it, but it's going through that process currently, and I don't know what the end result of that'll be, but it's being looked at on a national level as well. So,
And we're pretty much in sync with the rest of the state, as far as you know.
in sync in terms of what we charge per
Yeah.
other. I don't know the answer off the top of my head. Do any of you know? I don't. We use similar vendors, so I suspect we are, but I don't know the answer for sure.
Thank you.
Well, I'm pretty sure that 99% of the people in this county do not want to lower them. Because I can't imagine that we would lower any of the rates in there. I mean, they don't pay to talk to their attorneys, correct?
That's correct.
Yeah, I don't see what the problem is.
There's a privilege.
That's correct. So anyway, I certainly stand for any of the questions the commission may have, or come back for follow-up, whatever, so.
Thank you for helping the constituent that came in today.
And it
That
will
was
follow
nice.
up on the exhaust question, and I'll do a memo to you and kind of outline some options and get with the state's attorney, and we will explore that. I know it's frustrating, it's just not an easy fix.
Mr. Chair, if I might, you mentioned pretrial diversion. Can you embellish on that?
Sure. In terms of like the 24/7 program?
Well, how does that procedurally, how does that work, pretrial diversion?
Yeah, I mean, well, pretrial diversion can mean two things. Pretrial diversion can mean somebody not actually going into the criminal justice system and doing another program. I'll use the example of like juveniles, we have alternatives. So maybe rather than going through the criminal justice system, they go through an alternative program. That's one type of diversion. The reference I used with 24/7, I mean diversion in terms of they're not sitting in the county jail. They're out. This allows them to be out on bond, out on the street, working with their family, and not sitting in our facility at $80 a day. So they're diverted from our facility while they're waiting pretrial.
And this is your call or a combined call of you and the court?
All of our programs that we do, like the 24/7 program, it's up to the court as to whether or not they're eligible for 24/7. So the judge has to establish eligibility for 24/7, whether it's a pretrial condition or a post-conviction condition, and then we administer the program.
And my next question, electronic monitoring, and the court makes that call, or are you in conjunction with you or just the court?
Well, both, but the initial decision is made by the judge. But we all agreed up front with the public defender, state's attorney, sheriff, and the courts that we'd stand together and say, we all support the electronic monitoring program. So if a judge puts somebody out on electronic monitoring and something happens, I mean, we're all in it together as a collaborative.
Okay. And the out-of-state prisoners, they haul them in or we have to go get them?
We meet them halfway, and that's built into the cost. There's a fee in our current marshal's contract that they pay us an hourly rate, a mileage rate to go pick them up.
Okay, and I guess I have one more question. I had a constituent or two ask me about the sheriff patrolling in Rapid City, and that doesn't occur, right?
Yeah, and again, we talked about this yesterday, but let me answer the question this way. I mean, the question is, why do I see Pennington County deputies in the city limits of Rapid City? Well, one, our office is in downtown, so it's kind of hard to get to the other parts of the county without driving through the city. But beyond that, we are the county coroner, so we still do coroner work throughout the county. We serve civil process, throughout the county, including Rapid City. We do warrant work every day throughout Pennington County. And in terms of sitting on a corner and running radar in Rapid City, no. But if a deputy is driving down Omaha Street at 2 in the morning and to head up Highway 44 and there's a drunk in front of them, are they going to ignore that? No, they will arrest the individual. Same thing if they have their radar on and they meet somebody on Omaha Street coming at them at 80 miles an hour driving reckless, they're going to turn around and cite that person or arrest that person. But routinely running radar in the city limits of Rapid City, no. Our contract communities, of course, that is our responsibility.
Any other questions for Kevin?
Well, I would certainly, if I may, Mr. Chair, echo Mr. Jorgensen's comments about I think the sheriff is doing a tremendous job, and I'm sure glad he's on board. He's I think one heck of a patriotic servant, and I commend you, Kevin. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Okay,
I'll follow up on a memo with the exhaust question.
you bet. Thank you.
Thanks.
Problem, and I don't know how you.
Okay, we've got about 5 minutes before we hear from Leanne.
Mason tried to make it. How many, we have to have 200 deputies? So you live with it.
But I'll keep saying, and they used to say, we don't want this, and we live on Fifth Street, or we live on, and you're like, okay, so you live on a major arterial, or you live on a highway, then you're gonna get moved.
Morning.
Good morning. Are you ready for me?
I think so.
I gotta go.
Yeah, I can wait.
Yeah.
I'm good.
Where's your army people that like?
I said that when they came out, I didn't know I was supposed to bring my whole staff with me.
Look kind of lonely out there.
I know. I guess I could have brought night shift in. And put 911 on hold for a couple of days.
Make it look good.
Yeah.
So George, did you guys get hit in Hill City with all that rain?
Oh, we got some rain, we didn't get any
But
hail.
nothing like
no.
we did?
No.
Boy, I'm telling you, it was bad.
Well, we got, I don't have a rain gauge up, but I'm guessing if I had had half to an inch.
I'd be interested how much rain we got last night. Did you know, Lindell?
No, we had a real big rain, and coming out on Lower Spring Creek Road, I got to about 3 miles from Highway 79, and it was completely different. But from there east to our place, it had laid the grass down, and spreader ditches were running.
Yeah, we had it in the afternoon, about 5, 6 o'clock, and then we had it again 11:30, so it was flooding some of my properties over there, and then at night, like I said, Scott's like, holy cow, you got your plants out.
Yeah, the evening news, it showed, we hadn't left town too long before that, and turned the news on, the evening news, and water running down the streets in Rapid. I said, wait a minute.
Looked like the river ran through it.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yep. I was doing hair at that time after I was done here, so I was watching the river.
I meant to ask you, the coroner has to be a doctor, right? The sheriff can't.
No, you can, No.
You don't have to be a doctor.
no.
So what kind of training do you have to be a coroner?
If you run for election, all you have to do is be smart enough to get the votes.
So you can.
They
Well,
train
you
you.
could be the coroner if you want to.
It's some fun training, George. It's some fun training that they teach you how to like pull vitreous fluid, things like that, yeah.
Yeah.
If you really want to be a coroner.
Okay, Leanne, you just tell us what you want us to hear.
That's it, I'm done. Well, good morning, Leanne Hollenshed, 911 Dispatch, Emergency Services Communications Center. Yeah, let's be official, right? So I know we have a lot of fun things in the packet this year, but the bottom line, when we get to that, my budget is, request is actually $3,670,567, but the county's share that would come out of general fund would actually be $678,837. So it's a small portion of the overall, but I do generate a lot of revenue through other sources, so that's the big thing. But my big things for the year are replacing vehicles. I'm replacing one this year, another next year. And then I also have to buy a radio analyzer for my radio shop. It's about $38,000, but it saves all of our user agencies a ton of money because we can now fix their stuff without sending it off. And that makes a big difference over the long haul. And we've just replaced, all the agencies have replaced their portable and mobile radios over the last few years, and so we need a new piece of equipment to be able to work on them. So those are my big things, other than my new center, which I think will be interesting. I have kind of built in a 5% as far as utilities and things like that for the new center because I'm in a space that's twice the size. So I'm not really sure what that's going to look like, and I think that's a conservative estimate overall.
I'll agree.
My FTEs do not change. I'm actually in the process of hiring right now, but I do have 46 on the books, 47 bodies, 46 and a half FTEs. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Mr. Chair, I do have a question. I don't understand this, and I know there's a good explanation, but if you look at your expenditures, and I'm looking at 425, it's repairs and maintenance. here's what I didn't get. I don't know if that includes that 91,687 that is in the auditor's budget. And that's on page, yeah, she has a lot of number ones, but it's the 2016 lease purchases budget. And I was trying to figure out why she would have a lease purchase for 911 in hers.
Does it say 911 towers?
It just says, you can sure look at it. Principal, 911 equipment lease expires 2018. And I'm trying to figure out why I'm going to ask more than just you, but
Yep.
I don't understand why a department's lease purchase would be in her budget. Yeah.
The 911 tower, which is right above
Yep.
that, there are two lease purchases. Accurately. There are two lease purchases, the 911 radios, which are internal to the dispatch center that we replaced in 2013, and we're repaying a lease purchase on that. And if you look at my budget on expenditures, it's down there at 441, line 441 and 442 of debt principal and debt interest. That is actually totally out of my budget, and it's in there because it's a shared expense between all of the user agencies, which is why it goes out of the 911. The tower is actually owned by the county, if you will. It's a capital asset for the county and the city. Everybody does contribute to that. In fact, it's the city of Rapid City because of their agencies, the county, and then Box Elder Fire and Police Department because they got a big benefit out of it. So when they're doing a lease purchase, which we are actually coordinating for them, but we're not actually paying anything on it other than what we've already paid in the past, which was about $160,000 of the $1.2 million that it cost for that. So I'm not sure, I can't answer the question of why
Yeah,
the
I'll
auditor put it
ask when
there.
they come. It just, I thought maybe you would know, but it isn't quite making sense to me that we put it in her budget and in your budget. And there's probably a very good bookkeeping explanation.
Yeah, I don't know what it is.
Yeah, okay. Thank you. All right, so we've got, do you like your new digs?
I love my new digs, yeah. It's, I stop on by and see it now that it's actually full. Or wait until August and come by and just stand at the corner and watch, you know, it'll be real fun during rally.
You might be busy the next few weeks, too.
It's, last night, as my supervisor said, they got their butts kicked. It was just, yeah, sometimes it's like that, and when we do get weather, a lot of things happening, it's not unusual. Stabbings, assaults, heart attacks, job security. Now, that sounds kind of crazy, but it is.
You're funny.
Yeah.
I have a question on 441 on your expenditures. Why the fluctuation between 2014, 15, and 16? 144,000, 65,000, 158,000.
That is an excellent question. The difference here is we, on our internal budget, had our portion of that tower because we did pay some of it, so that was included up until this year. And now going forward, it's a smaller portion. We're only paying our radio. So there's two lease purchases that we had on one line in our budget, at the tower and the radio. The tower, we no longer have a commitment to. The radio, we do, so we're actually bumping that up to get that paid off quicker. But that's why the fluctuation is there. Last year, we had two payments, one for the tower, one for the radio. This year, we have one for the radio and only have for the radio going forward.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions for Leanne?
Good job, Leanne.
Great, thank you.
I like your motto that you have on your wall, or your
Yeah.
mission statement. Looks good.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, let's see.
Took a while. I said that took a while.
Yeah. did you just call, Dustin?
He's on a phone call, he'll be right down.
Thanks.
It's really different because we've had to have pretty much everybody in one building so that you can call them, because before it was, several of those departments were a ways away.
Yeah, the state's attorney's deal was interesting, you know, in terms of their having to move people.
In Buildings and Grounds, we jokingly said, well, we need to build a garage or something, you know, but.
Well, you need one of those mail tubes where you can stick a person in there and shoot them over.
We could do, what is it they do in
Like at a
space?
bank? Yeah.
No, I was thinking like those space shows where they transport personally or something. But, I mean, certainly I get that. And I know they haven't, there've been, some of the things Buildings and Grounds has dealt with is that sometimes folks haven't really, when they first moved in, figured out that there was this ADA access in the front and the back of the building and underneath, and they thought that there wasn't, and they were saying, you know, some of the lawyers were saying, well, I have a client here and they're in a wheelchair, we can't get them over there, but that's really not true, so. But part of it.
No, we've come a long way from where we had one building.
It was easier to have one building and everybody in one spot.
Yeah.
This isn't the way it is. Good morning,
We're,
Dustin.
well, let's see, we'll wait till Deb gets back here. At least we know you can respond on short notice.
We were just talking about how it's nice to have everybody in, pretty much everybody in the building.
Well, I hope I can speak intelligently and intelligibly. I was in the office till about 1 last night, and we started up again at about 5:30 this morning, so.
Flooding, bad. Where at?
Antelope Creek, significantly, and then Rapid Creek out by Caputa and some of those areas. But there's completely lost a bridge on Antelope Creek Road.
Oh, wow.
Lots of gravel gone, culverts gone.
How much rain did we get, Dustin?
I don't
Do you
know
know?
what the total was from that storm. I don't.
That was pretty intense.
Antelope Creek, is that road north of you?
There, it's parallels Lower Spring Creek, but it's between Highway 44 and Lower Spring Creek. It follows, it's over the ridge from us, and it follows the valley. I think there's only one bridge on it, isn't there?
I don't know. I mean,
Maybe two.
the
One on the creek and one south of it. But
If you come back at one.
lots of water in weird places.
And I got a call from Corey Dodds this morning, so.
That comes around and hooks up with Old Folsom Road, that comes around and hooks up with Old Folsom Road, or is in that vicinity?
You come up Lower Spring Creek to the railroad crossing. You hit Old Folsom, go about 2 miles north, then you turn right on Antelope Creek Road, and that goes east and comes out at Caputa.
Okay,
Comes on this side of Thompson Butte.
okay. Okay, now, yeah. I thought I recognized that name, but
Lots of water. Lots of water.
Whenever you're ready, sir.
Oh, okay. Well, good morning, Commissioners. My name is Dustin Willett. I'm the Director of Emergency Management for Pennington County. What would you like me to just present a general overview of what I have here and then
Please
stand for
do.
questions?
Yes.
Absolutely. So before you, hopefully, is the 2016 emergency management packet. It gets a little convoluted for a couple of different reasons. One, there are several budgets or funds that are managed through my office, so it's not one nice, this is my budget. There are multiple budgets that my office prepares. The other thing that gets a little convoluted is all the different funding sources. With the federal grants and the city and the county, that can get a little confusing as well. So I can go through this page by page and just give you a quick brief synopsis, and we can go from there. So just so that we're all on the same page, are you looking at the 2016 EM response subsidies as your first?
First page is hazmat and water teams.
Oh, okay, so this will be fun. They're not in the same order. Oh, okay, no, that's it. So the auditor requested that in years past, they've always been separate. The water rescue team and the hazmat team have been different budgets, I guess, or different line items for the auditor office. Julie requested that I put both of those, the hazmat and the water rescue team, under the heading or under the single item of EM response subsidies. So we're there. But I have them combined. I don't have them separate. So what that is the county contribution to the regional response teams that are run jointly between the city and county and to some degree the state. So those two teams are the Regional Hazardous Materials Emergency Response Team and the Pennington County Water Rescue / Dive Rescue Team. The membership of the hazmat team is 100% Rapid City Fire Department. That's out of Station 6 up there on the hill on Highway 16. A lot of the equipment and training is funded through the state. The state provides a Homeland Security grant for them for a lot of their equipment and training. The cost sharing for Pennington County comes in the building and maintenance and equipment and staffing and people and just all that goes into maintaining that team. What Pennington County gets from that obviously is an emergency, a hazardous materials emergency response team. We charge for our people and our time anytime we go out beyond Pennington County. But because Pennington County is a cooperator in this team with the city, when we respond within Pennington County, there's no charge for that. So it's a joint team. That's an MOU that's been in place for, probably since 1998 is when that was created. This year, and the water rescue team, the membership there is a little bit different. It's Rapid City firefighters, it's Rapid City police officers, it's Pennington County Sheriff's deputies, and then a couple of Rapid City police officers as well. And again, it's a jointly funded team with a contribution from the county as well as contributions from the state and contributions from the city to cost share to have that team available. So those are those two teams. In talking with the city, again, because that's where the budget, we just kind of like our budget, there's a cost sharing there with the city. We've kept that equitable. Basically, the city puts in the same dollar amount into that line item as the county puts into that line item. And this year we kept that, we agreed to keep that flat. So there is no increase requested this year for either the hazmat team or the water rescue team. It's the same request dollar amount as last year. I'd be happy to stand for any questions on those two items. Okay. Flood warning system, is that what you have next?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
So this is the MET-WARN system, the network of satellite-based stage and precipitation gauges that the USGS operates, manages, maintains. Because of ice damage, every winter they go out and winterize, take the sensors out of the creek so that the ice doesn't damage the equipment. So there's a significant cost involved to the USGS in terms of going out every year and starting them and then going out in the fall and taking them down, and then all the satellite costs and communication and data processing costs. So this is a system that we use. It was put into place again in the mid-90s, late 90s. I think 98 again is the year that we put MET-WARN into existence. Incredibly crucial system as we're seeing right now. It allows us to see what the drainages are doing that we monitor and can give us, depending on where that precipitation event is, it can give us
hours of warning that there's a flood coming. So if we get something, if we see the gauges up below Pactola or Johnson Siding come up dramatically, we know that water's coming. We know it's going to be here. We know it's going to come through town. We know it's going to be out east, and we know that hours in advance, which is huge. We have those in Spring Creek, Battle Creek, so we protect Hermosa and Keystone and Hill City and Box Elder and us, Rapid City, and then everyone that lives along those drainages as well. It's a crucial system, a good system, and we cost share that. The budget that you see there is a little misleading in that this is, the USGS has a cost portion, an equal portion, and we have an equal portion. So we share that cost equally with the USGS, but the county does not pay that whole $40,600. If you see that schedule broken out below, we in turn, my office sends out bills to the municipalities in Pennington County that benefit from that system. So we actually bring in revenue to help offset those costs for that MET-Warn system. So what we have is actually that Pennington County portion. So while the overall budget truly is that $4,600, that's our match that we pay to USGS, what comes out of the county coffers, so to speak, for fiscal year 16 would be the $9,338.
So, Dustin, we also have this emergency management revenues page. It's a few pages back.
That's probably what
I'm
you're
there.
talking about for the,
What's that?
that's what you're talking about for the
Income.
40,600, right?
Right, but this is the cost, right? And then on that emergency management revenues, for the flood warning system, it says $31,262.
So on that revenue page somewhere, and it hasn't been there in the years that I've presented this budget, but when you say that, it would seem to me, and I'll visit with the auditor, that somewhere we should show that 9,338 of that comes from general fund. Is that what you're getting at?
Yeah, because I would hate to have the general fund charged, so to speak, for $40,600. It seems like
Well, it is, but then we have revenue to offset.
yeah, but you
that,
don't want to
but-
set your mill levy based on the 40,000. You want to set it,
I'll visit with the auditor and find out how to
I mean,
capture that 9,300
Yeah.
and make that right.
and she may have that done. It's just that sometimes we don't quite know how that's done.
And honestly, I don't know how that's done, so I will follow up with that and figure out on the.
Dustin, how do you figure the split costs, I mean, on floodboarding systems between each agency? I mean, how do you figure out the exact number, who pays what on any of these splits for county, city, or state?
So that is lined out, and I don't have the water rescue and hazmat MOUs in front of me, but it is detailed out on there how they arrive at that cost, and it's
Is it population, or is it?
the water rescue team and dive rescue team. No, it's a matter of these are the costs. This is what it costs to run this team, and we're going to share that cost equitably. Is basically what it comes down to for those two teams. The flood warning system, and I can come back to that because I see you have a question, but
Okay.
on the flood warning system, originally, back in the 90s, when this was put into place, the percentages were calculated based on population served. So it is on my plate to maybe revisit those calculations and get those folks together and see if we're still where we need to be.
Right.
Honestly, as far as priorities and time, I haven't had time to make it to that, but again, we're going off of population, a percentage based on population that was calculated back in the mid to late 90s. So that number, I don't know if everything has gone up proportionally and that's still the same, or if new developments have sprung up and those numbers are a little bit different. I truly don't know.
I guess that was my concern, is just from what I've been through on the city budget and stuff too, of who's paying what and how it's getting paid, and never really got, except, the answer was population, but, and you just said it might need to change based on the date that they had.
It's a matter of how, is there much disparity in the population growth with these different communities?
Right.
And I don't know what that answer is. so.
Maybe just the date when they last did that. You don't have to, if the commission wants to do that, it's fine, but it would be nice to know that last date that they did that census.
It's when, well, these numbers are based on when the system went operational, so late 90s. I'm going to say 97 or 98 is when these percentages were calculated.
Thank you.
And the contract is with who?
USGS.
Okay.
United States Geological Survey.
Yeah, I understand.
Thank you, Dustin.
And while we're on that, if I might, Mr. Chair, the Hill City, the Rapid City paper as a weather page, AccuWeather page, and for lots of years I've been going to try to contact somebody, and I guess now that somebody is, now is the time and you're the somebody.
Okay.
It says flows on Spring Creek at Keystone, near Keystone. Well, it's just not the case. It's Battle Creek and Keystone and Spring Creek and Hill City. And so I don't know how many people even read that part of the paper, but if you glance at it, it shows the CFS, the cubic feet per second flow, Spring Creek near Keystone, and it's just not accurate.
Now, Spring Creek doesn't go near Keystone.
No, not for measuring water flow, no. But anyway, I don't know who you contact. I tried to call the paper, and I did a week or so ago, and the other day I noticed the paper is still that way, and how it got that way, I don't know. But it's been that way for years and years.
Honestly, I never caught that, I never saw that, wasn't aware of that. I don't spend much time on the Rapid City Journal. But I will look into it and see where I can go with that.
I appreciate it. It's misleading, obviously.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, were there any questions on the hazmat or the water rescue team budgets?
Nope, just pandemic flu budget.
Next.
Thank you.
That's where next I have LEPC.
So whatever you want.
That's what we have
I'll just
too.
follow,
Okay,
that's
okay.
fine.
So
Thank
LEPC, Local Emergency Planning Committee, that is a organization mandated by the state, kind of, because it's mandated by federal law. Federal law says every state will have a state emergency response commission, and in turn, every county will have a local emergency planning committee. The local emergency planning committee is tasked with managing this gets long, the Pennington County Comprehensive Hazardous Materials Emergency Response Plan. So basically, it's the hazmat plan, the hazmat response plan for Pennington County. I've sat on that committee ever since I was on the hazmat team, so I've been on that committee for well over a decade. Actually, earlier this year, I was appointed by Governor Dennis Dugard as one of the commissioners for the State Emergency Response Commission. So I actually sit on the State Emergency Response Commission
So
as well.
how's the National Guard in the state in Rapid City involved? Because I did go to a program where the National Guard showed us and all their procedures.
The CST, the 82nd
Yep.
Civil Support Team. Yep, and there's a lot of hazmat resources. So this plan is actually what brings all those resources together. This plan specifically addresses how the Regional Hazardous Materials Team interfaces with the 82nd Civil Support Team, the bioengineering flight on Ellsworth, as well as Ellsworth Fire Department Hazardous Materials Team. We have an agreement that we sign every year with Ellsworth to help provide hazmat response should we need it.
So have you used that response a lot?
We have responded more with the 82nd Civil Support Team than with the bioengineering flight or with Ellsworth Fire and Rescue. Our team has a very, very close working relationship with the 82nd CST. We provide them training, they provide us training, and we do a lot of joint exercises. As far as actual responses, emergency responses, there aren't too many hazardous material responses that we've been on. When I say we, I mean our regional response team.
Right.
There aren't too many that have exceeded our capabilities. We've been able to handle them. What happens occasionally is the term that we use is reach back. So we will call out to Ellsworth, which is where the CST is housed at this point. We'll call out to them and talk with some of their specialists and bounce some ideas off them or get some ideas from them. But We've had some deployments, some joint deployments for large planned events. Sturgis Rally, the CST is deployed, as well as other CST teams. So we've worked together operationally, but most of what we do is training and exercise with them. There are very few huge, large-scale hazmat events that would require that, but when it does,
You're ready.
that's when the LEPC comes into its own. The other thing the LEPC does is look at, in fact, was it yesterday? My days, I tell you what. Yesterday, we did a walkthrough of the Kugler Corporation. So one of the things, there's under that federal legislation that creates all this, there's these tier 2 sheets. So anybody that's involved in the manufacture, use, or transportation of hazardous materials pays the state a fee. That's where this money comes from. There's actually quite a bit of power in the local emergency planning committee to inspect these facilities. We don't get into that can of worms. Nobody does. But we did a walkthrough of the Kugler facility. They just upped their anhydrous ammonia tank from 14,000 gallons to 30,000 gallons. So we go through the community for these various businesses and confirm and see what kinds of hazards and chemicals are there in our community. And then we base that plan off of this. In terms of the budget, every dollar that gets spent for the LEPC is provided through that fee system. Everybody, all the hazmat businesses pay a fee to the state. It's managed by DENR. DENR then in turn gives every county in South Dakota has to have an LEPC. If you don't have an LEPC, DENR says your sheriff and usually commission chair are now your LEPC. So every county has to have an LEPC, and the DENR then divvies up that money based on numbers of businesses and population and pays that money back to the LEPC to do their work. So none of this money comes out of general fund dollars. These are monies that are proportionally distributed to us through DENR from those hazmat collected fees.
And it's pretty interesting, their procedure and how they contain the chemicals and that procedure that's done until all the suits and everything. It was pretty amazing to watch, so.
Yep, I spent most of my life as a hazmat responder. I've had just about every certification there is, and I loved it. They affectionately referred to us as glowworms.
You look like him. You look like him.
Well,
That's pretty cool.
And another thing that the LAPC has done, 2 projects that I thought were really great, is when we did the survey to see what kind of traffic was going up I-90 as North Dakota ramped up, we knew that there were hazardous materials more frequently traveling up the highway, and you did that survey, and that's where Ellsworth was a lot of help on that.
Yep, I designed and managed and ran that survey. That was a commodity flow study.
Right.
And we're getting ready to probably do some other commodity flow studies. The Bakken traffic has changed our commodity flow study parameters, so that's something that we're going to take a look at again. And rail continues to develop, and we tend to see different things coming over rail. So yes, commodity flow studies are something that the LEPC does. The other huge thing that's of direct benefit to the citizens, it's amazing. In fact, it was overwhelming the last time we did it, so we're going to do it with a higher tempo. And again, almost everything in my office is collaborative. We very rarely go it alone on the county dime for anything. Everything we do is pretty much collaborative. So in partnership, the LEPC with Rapid City Solid Waste Division,
Right.
we do the household hazardous material cleanup, where at the fairgrounds, again, collaborative, we reach out, work it out so that we can use the fairgrounds. We pay for a private contractor to come in and collect, just drive through. People can bring whatever chemicals, pesticides, paints, things that the landfill does not take or does not want to take or should not be taking. All that comes through, and we blew the doors off it when we did it a year and a half ago, and it's scheduled again for this year. So that's something that we partner. The LEPC really plans and drives in conjunction with Rapid City Solid Waste. So huge benefit. The line of cars goes on forever. We literally collected tens of thousands of pounds and gallons of hazardous materials out of the community. Any other questions with LEPC?
That's fine. Mr. Chair, the revenue is, it's all from Pier.
Correct.
And the number, you're budgeting 10,000, or requesting 10,000, and And if that comes in short,
Then I don't spend it.
just, no, thank you.
Yep, this is spending authority. If the monies don't, because so many of my budgets are grant dependent or money from peer dependent, if, I have to put something in front of you for spending authority, but if the money doesn't come in, I don't spend it, I can't spend it. So, that's the spending authority, but I will only spend what we receive in.
Okay, any other questions for Bill Dustin?
All right, pandemic flu. I never should have called it that, but I did. There was at this point, most of our grants from the federal government are reimbursable grants, meaning you spend the money up front, you submit the costs, and then they reimburse you those dollars. That wasn't always the case. It used to be they just write you a check, you got the grant, here's $10,000, and if you only spent $6,000 of it, they weren't interested in taking the $4,000 back, they granted you $10,000, so now there's that $4,000. When I came into this office, there was this kind of catch-all, and there were like 3 different grant programs that had money sitting here. Almost all of them were administered through the Department of Health, through the Community Ready Initiative, which was a CDC grant program to prepare communities for whatever your flavor of the day pandemic is, whether it be bird flu or Ebola or what have you, some type of medical emergency. The other thing that came into this pot of money was, and what we concentrate pretty much on now, is POD, or point of dispensation. So we are tasked by the state to say, okay, we need to deliver a dose of prophylactic antibiotics to every person in Pennington County within 24 hours. How do you do that? And so we have a nice thick 3-ring binder that is our point of dispensation plan, and how we would get medication, prophylactic or otherwise, to every single resident in Pennington County. And we use things, we can use mail, we can use head of household, we can go through large employers like Regional Health, and allow them to distribute to their employees. We distribute to them, they distribute to our employees. The other part that comes into this is Pennington County Emergency Management is the pass-through organization for any of the strategic SNS stockpile, so the strategic national stockpile of medications. So there's all these different types of medications and medical supplies. There's some in Pier, there's some in some other caches, but then the federal government maintains these caches all around the country. They don't tell anybody where they are, but they're all ready to be delivered. And so like another agreement that we sign every year with Ellsworth is, if Ellsworth wants strategic national stockpile medications, that agreement goes through my office. We have to put the way that's set up, it's crazy, but the way that's set up is our office, my office processes that request, receives those supplies in, and then passes them on. So all of those things were part of what these monies were designed to set up. This pot is not growing. There is no more money being applied for. There is no more money coming in. It's a matter of all this money was sitting there left over. I honestly, because this came to light when I tried to buy an oven, and was in front of this board over some kitchen supplies. I have flat out asked the State Department of Health if they would take the money back. And the answer is no. We're so done with that program and those, I mean, this money was, we're going back to 2005, 2006. Mm-hmm. As far as anybody on the grantee side is concerned, that money no longer exists, so here it sits.
Well, Dustin, you have supplies that go up from 2014 to 2015 to 2016, 3,600, 7,300, now it's 26,000. What?
So, yep, good question. And what it was me trying to, one, wrap my head, a couple of things here. Me trying to wrap my head around how much was in there, because I kept getting different, every time I worked with the auditor, we'd find different little things here and there. So it was really trying to figure out, okay, how much money is sitting there, really? And when I first came in, I said, well, we can do these exercises, and rehab the pod trailer and get all this stuff done, and we can just get that money spent, and then this goes away. It's done. We spent it on what we needed to spend it on. It goes away. The limitation there was man hours or people hours. I didn't have the time or the staff to get that done. My anticipation now is last year, the board granted me a much-needed FTE. I have that FTE in my office now, and so now I have someone tasked with, a part of that job description is the pod trailer, the exercise that goes right along with this. So my intent is, now that I have the person that can manage the programs that these funds can be appropriately expended in, I'm hoping that we get those dollars spent and done with, and this whole account goes away, this whole budget goes away.
So the bottom line is, once you have accounted for it all, you came up with 26,000 for 2016.
There's a little bit of spending authority this year, and so there is about $30,000 in that pot. But hopefully, we go through the spending authority this year, and that, hopefully at 26,000, if we expend $26,000 in 2016, you will not see pandemic flu again. That those monies will be expended. There are no new monies coming in, and the intent is to expend them on biohazmat specific supplies. Its supplies are in the point of dispensation, the pod trailer that we intend to do. The training and exercise is biological and large-scale prophylactics exercises. And that's the hope there.
So you can use some of this money for hazmat, you can use them for some of the other programs that you have to cut the costs? Or
Well-
is that mixing grants or mixing stuff that
We're
they
so
don't let you do?
far out of when that money was granted,
Right.
that honestly, the grantees don't care. They don't care what we spend the money on at this point. The right thing to do is spend that money related to what those original grants were. And those original grants were to prepare the community. Almost all of those grants were to prepare the community for point of dispensation and pan flu or a biological threat. So if I can keep that money funneled to those types of activities, in my mind, that alleviates any questions or doubts or appropriateness for expending those funds.
So it doesn't cut any of the other budgets by any, you're just gonna use it because it was money given already?
We
You're
have
not
a
gonna change
huge-
those budgets?
No, we have a
according-
huge a training mission, exercise mission. And that exercise mission does cost money. And my hope in 2016 is to set up the exercises, because you can exercise almost every function that you need to exercise, whether you pick a large wildfire, whether you pick a flood, or whether you pick a pandemic flu or a biological attack, or whatever your scenario is, you exercise the same components. So if we design our exercises with a public health or a biological nexus, then we can do our training and exercise with these dollars.
I
So
appreciate
rather than doing an exercise, rather than paying for exercise out of my EM operating budget, my intent is to have those exercises have a biological nexus and use these monies to support that part of my office's mission.
And Dustin, I appreciate that, because that was kind of where I was going on some of the stuff yesterday on grants, and again, that we can cut some costs in other areas, and it's nice to know that people are coming forward and saying they're using these grants, or what they're using them for, and they can cut costs in other areas on the budget, so,
Okay.
and for other parts of their budgets and for general funds, so I appreciate that, thank you.
You bet.
Go ahead.
I do have a question. Part of this funding, there's just a little bit probably left, but when Governor Rounds was in office, there was a program that was to get, and I can't remember the qualifications, but to get flu shots to kids in school. And I'm curious, do you think that this would ever be activated for some of that? Because that, if I remember right, that was kind of why some of this was being held, as in case the governor said, again, you're going to do this.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason that they ran that through is because originally the program for pandemic flu was the ideal way to run through those inoculations for kids.
And so that's what we did. When I say we, the office, it was prior to my time. I was actually involved in that exercise as a paramedic, not as an emergency manager. But what Anthony did, my predecessor, was use some of these dollars and the pod, the point of suspension. Because again, the point of suspension, the
I know
idea
what it
is to
is.
deliver medication to the public. Well, the governor's office said, we're going to make these vaccinations available to children for free. We're going to give you thousands and thousands of doses of flu vaccine. It was a natural fit. Anthony used some of these monies, one, to build that trailer out, and two, to design and build what truly was a pod exercise. We are going to practice giving these medications out, but rather than giving people
Right.
M&Ms, which is what, most pod exercises do, instead of getting people out and giving them M&Ms, we said, hey, let's run this pod exercise, use real health folks and administer these medications. And it worked great. The question is, how long would you want to sit on that money?
I don't know, but
in the
yeah.
anticipation that there may be more free flu vaccines, and then maybe all the pieces fall into place and we can actually do another exercise like that. It's certainly a possibility, but I don't necessarily think it's the right way forward there.
I just wanted to
Yep.
put that history in there because that was why it's been held for all these years.
And all the supply dollars there reflect, updating might not be the right word, refreshing and making sure that pod trailer is capable
Okay.
of achieving that mission still. So.
Okay.
The larger question to me is anybody, any watching what's going on with that money, or any oversight, in other words?
My office and you.
But I mean, higher headquarters,
No, I've asked.
whoever the grantor was.
Yep, nope, the department, most of that money, everything that I can track came through the Department of Health via the CDC. And I have no better way of putting it than to them, those dollars are dead. They expended them, they paid them out in the mid-2000s, and
Oversight's totally gone.
absolutely.
Okay.
I asked specifically, one, if the oversight was there, and then two, my other question was, hey, we're not using them, do you want them back? And the answer was no.
Okay.
Any other questions for Dustin?
All right, so Homeland Security equipment budget, pretty easy one in that this is just like, what this is we have a Homeland Security grant that's available every year. It's open right now. Entities within Pennington County that meet the requirements, basically local government or certain nonprofits, can apply for Homeland Security grants. 100% grant program, no match, has to have a terrorism nexus, basically. Very popular grant program, but it's a reimbursable grant. So what this is a holdover from when Pennington County used to be the pass-through for the entire region. So anybody in western South Dakota that bought something through a Homeland Security grant, Pennington County was the pass-through for that. So we'd pay the money and then get the reimbursable grant, but we would front the money basically for the entire western side of South Dakota. That's no longer the case. Now every county fends for itself, so to speak. There is no county management of all of that. But historically, over the last few years with the funding that we've seen, we've been somewhere in the $100, $150, sometimes $180,000 worth of Homeland Security grants that pass through Pennington County. So what this is $200,000 of spending authority. And as of right now, as of this second right now, there are 0 grant dollars supporting that. This is 100% what successful grants would bring in. So once we know who was successful in the Homeland Security grant program and for what amount, that's when we expend those funds. It's a reimbursable grant, and that money comes back to us from Homeland Security. So again, this is 100% grant supported. If we only get $100 in Homeland Security grants, then you'll only see $100 come out of this budget.
Do you have to apply for those annually?
Yep.
And does the LEPC help decide on what the content of the application should be?
No, the individual subgrantees, anybody that's eligible can jump online and apply. So we don't have any control over who applies. So any eligible entity within Pennington County can apply. All of those, it's an online system, all of those applications go straight to Homeland Security in Pier. What Homeland Security in Pier does is goes through every single one of those applications and says, this meets our criteria, this meets our criteria, this meets that, nope, this one doesn't. And so then they send back a batch to the county that says, these are all the ones that meet our criteria. Then what the county has to do is, and we've decided this as Region 4, so West River, all the counties, 9 counties or 8 counties in the tribe, have decided that each county will then, through a process internal to that county, come up with 4 projects to move forward. And so for Pennington County, the last few years, that has been primarily members of the Users Board. So the Pennington County Sheriff, the Rapid City Fire Chief, Rapid City Police Chief, the Commission, at this time it's Commissioner Farabee, City Council Representative, National Guard Representative, so the Emergency Management Users Board. The Emergency Management Users Board in the old building sat in your chairs, and all the applicants came before them and made a quick 5-minute presentation on the merits of their application, and then that group of people decided which 4 applications to forward on into the process. Once we have those 4, then we have, this is set again by OEM and HLS, law enforcement representative and the emergency manager. So 2 people from every county. One has to be the emergency manager, the other is a law enforcement representative, come together with their 4 requests. We all sit around a table. Here's the pot of money that's available. Here's all the requests. We decide what gets funded and what doesn't. So it's a very, very competitive process. We have, I think this year we have about, I'm just gonna off the cuff say there's $400,000 available for 8 counties in the tribe. So it very competitive grant.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dustin, for that information.
All right. So then the meat and potatoes, my operating budget, basically, emergency management budget. This one, we are what they call an SLA county or state local agreement, meaning the federal government, FEMA, provides a significant amount of money to states and in turn counties across the nation. Most county level and state level emergency management organizations receive a significant part of their funding through FEMA, and that's through the Emergency Management Performance Grants. So in South Dakota, the state OEM gets those dollars from FEMA, the Emergency Management Performance Grants. Any county that wants to receive those funds signs an agreement with the state. That agreement comes before this board every year, the state and local agreement. And what it lines out is we will do these things in emergency management. We will have these plans, we will have these lists, we will do these programs in turn for the state then passing through those grant dollars to my office. So emergency management, this budget in front of you has 3 kind of 4, but 3 primary funding sources. Those funding sources are that emergency management performance grant, and then county general fund dollars, and then city general fund dollars are what fund this budget. The other thing that's out there is this is one of those special funds or special budgets in that unexpended funds at the end of the year go into a cash reserve, not back into general. So there is we depleted a lot of what had been built up there in moving into the new building, which was awesome. It was great to have that cushion there to allow us to outfit that room for the capabilities, the capacity that it has now. So it was a good thing. But there are quite a few dollars sitting there in that reserve cash balance, restricted fund balance that are budget dollars from previous unspent budget dollars from previous years. So those are the 4 areas where money can fund my current request. So in years past, we've done our best to keep the city and county portions equal. That doesn't always happen. There's a little bit of fluctuation there. There's some fluctuation in there right now that started the middle of last year and continues through this year. It's only fair in my mind. The reason I do that, I request more money from the city than I do from the county. because, and this is very timely, and hopefully we don't open a box of can of worms here, but I'm paid through the city. The city just went through a large wage study and then chose to implement that at a very high level. So I didn't think it was necessarily fair for the city to make a decision on my pay and then force the county to foot that bill. So the increase that I saw, me personally, because I'm a city employee, my pay goes through the city. The increase that I saw from that wage study, I actually pass 100% of that cost, the increase, not my salary, but the increase I pass on to the city. They made that decision, so at this point, the city contributes more than the county because they chose to pay me more.
So if we implement Condrey, you're gonna have to go back and refigure that.
Because I am currently a city employee, Nick left my position out of the Condrey. I went through the Condrey study 2 years ago or a year and a half ago,
So
so.
the bottom line is, you've got 142,000 from the feds, 110,900 from the city, and I took those away from your total budget and come up with 113,525. But is the emergency management cash reserves of 13,430? Is that what you're taking out of the reserves this year?
Yes.
So we're really down to about $100,000 is what you want from the county-
$100,095,
from the county.
yes.
All right, thanks.
Any further, I'm happy to stand for questions on this. This is our operating budget. The reason there is an increase is, again, the training side of it. Most of that I'm hoping to do through the pan-flu budget, but I now have a much-needed FTE, and I can get work done that has been stacking up, and some of those programs and some of that work does have dollars attached to it. So I've got the people now to do the work, and the work does cost money, so that constitutes necessarily that increase.
Thank you, Dustin, for that information.
You good?
Justin?
All righty, thank you for letting me ramble.
Thank you.
Interesting.
You did that pretty well.
Mary Booker on the side.
Okay. Equalization.
Fire Chief Multiburn, did you have any questions?
Hopefully you're all seeing an increase in the performance of emergency management. I'm serious about that.
I know.
We've got a good thing going on between the city and the county. I think the community's in better hands.
Good.
Raising the level of preparedness. So thanks for your support.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks, Chief.
You have the
Second in
floor,
the
sir.
second string here, or is that what we're?
That's right. Shannon apologized he couldn't be here, so here I am.
Are you saying the guy that knows the most, right here?
Yeah, I apologize in advance if anything's less than perfect. This is my first time up here. But I brought Deb with in case there's anything we need to, any questions we need to forward to Shannon and so forth. She's gonna take some notes back there. And she's pretty handy to have. And we'll probably be asking for a resolution down the road that will prevent her from retiring. Because I'm sure that we can function without her. But so I'll go ahead here, and I guess you guys will let me know if I need to do anything differently. I guess for starters, on the personnel, in a nutshell, we went up 102,000 there. And the reason for that is we had several full-time employees added, appraisers added from the previous year. So that, of course, includes everything that goes with those full-time positions, including the salaries, social security, workman's comp, and everything else. So I guess, do we have some questions on that part for starters, I guess?
Did you have quite a few changes in your insurance? People going from single to family coverage or something? Because that's really a large amount.
Yeah, and I was asking Shannon about that, and he said the group insurance cost included for everyone. Myself, my wife works at the hospital, so I'm through her, but he includes me because, you know, whatever happens and I'm on there. So that's included in that number. But the increase, I guess I didn't quite understand it either. That's a huge increase. And he said, well, that's the number we got from the auditor. So I don't have any great details on why that's such a large increase. He said that's what we got from the auditor.
Yeah, that's really really caught my eye.
Yeah, it is a lot there, yeah.
So this might not be a question for you, but maybe just the commission in general. When people are retiring and we're rehiring, are we taking those cost differences and are they putting it in the 2016 budget or any budget? Are they taking away the differences and showing us the differences of they hired two, one retired and what those differences are? Is that in your
Yeah,
budget?
yeah, that's figured in there, and part of the deal with, like Dick, for instance, who just retired, he had a fairly substantial payout, so it almost, we didn't really save a lot, because it was just almost like having another person there, the amount of payout he had, and we had Roger retiring as well. So there's a pretty significant payout under sick leave there on that, but that is figured into that.
And so if that happens, it's already figured into the budget? Or where does that money come from in anybody's budget if it's more?
Well, you just saw, when Denny retired, he put it in his budget for next year. Hopefully, they had Dick's in for this year. If you can do that if you're,
If you can plan
if you
ahead.
know it.
Yes.
That's it, yeah.
But that's what I'm saying. If you know it, what if you don't? Is it
Then
that?
they come in here and they say,
Ask for supplement, right?
ask for a supplement.
And is it that big usually?
Yeah.
Can be. And sometimes
Yeah,
they
yeah, I
try
see
to
what you're saying.
absorb it too. I mean,
Yeah.
sometimes some of the department heads will try to absorb it, but yeah,
Yeah, because in Roger's case, we really didn't know he was gonna retire,
yeah.
so.
And some are big and some aren't. I mean, depending on how bad, if they use their sick leave all the time, no, then there isn't so much. They,
If they didn't, then they come back with a big package. That's my question. Thank you. Sorry, it's not
It's-
just
that's all right.
pertinent to yours,
it's a
sir,
big
but-
item.
Well, in regard to payouts, and I've fussed about this in Pier and I fuss about it here, but it's always been my point of view that we keep track of the potential payouts as a liability for the whole county. And that in some manner, you fund a pool where departments make the payouts and don't impact budgets, and so people don't play games with keeping FTEs open for a certain period of time to balance the books. But I also think that there should be some policies that say, up to this point, you can accumulate. And beyond that, you either use it or lose it. Because there can be some pretty big payouts. Either way, if you don't plan for them, then you create problems for yourself.
Thank you, Lindell. I guess that was my point, and you just kind of defined it better. From what I've seen in the past from other budgets, it does make a difference in the overall picture if there's many people retiring at the same time, so.
We do have some policy on annual leave, don't we?
Correct. For vacation, you can accrue up to a certain point.
Yeah.
We don't on sick.
We don't on sick leave. But you only get paid at the maximum 50% of what you've saved in, I mean, I think maybe, since it got brought up, maybe we need those, to take another look at those things. I don't know.
Well, Jessica did provide us with some of that, did you not?
I mean, just what the rules are right now.
Yeah, we can get you guys that information again.
Someday.
It's just based on percentage of years of service and.
Anybody that leaves prior to 3 years of service doesn't get any sick time paid out. After 3 years of service, it's a percentage up to 50% for sick time. And then annual leave, there's a cap on annual leave, so vacation time, depending on the number of years you've been here, like 0 to 4 years, it's 120 hours. Then after 4, it goes up to 240 hours, and then 320 hours after 15 years. So there's a cap on those leave liabilities for vacation time. That.
So, Ms. Holly, can we put that on our list? You were writing down some certain things that we were looking at or might bring forward. Thank you, Ms. Holly.
The bell kind of rang the other day when Denny Gorton was talking about his payout.
Yep.
Well, if you look what Jess did, we owe $3.5 million if everybody
know.
quit tomorrow morning, and, you know, which is gonna
That sure
happen.
sounds like a motion to me, and I'll second that motion for a different line item for the county for payouts. That, I can't believe we haven't,
He's going to bring forward some information, George, so we
Yeah.
can
Yeah.
bring back some kind of policy, I think.
It would take some planning and
for next year's
things
budgeting
to
would be,
create that and manage it, but
you know, individual departments shouldn't be hit like that.
Yeah, but it is their liability, except it gives a
But you can't
distorted
budget.
picture of what their
The
budget
overall.
is for that
Right.
year.
Right.
And what the chairman's saying is, you know, I totally agree with, that should be a county liability item or contingency fund or whatever for just that thing.
But if we do that, we are going to have to gradually, we're going to have to levy for that because we don't have it out there. So we would have to levy and pull that in, maybe every year we'd have so much going to it till we reach that top part. So it's going to take some planning. Well, I'm not disagreeing with anything, I'm just saying it's not an easy fix.
Oh, totally agree, you can't do it overnight, you gotta gradually wean into it, but you gotta start someplace, and
Yep.
I totally agree with that.
but when you run a department, you have a pretty good idea by interacting with your staff, who's going to retire when.
Right.
And so in that respect, you say, okay, let's calculate your payout. And yes, the replacement would come into the pay scale at a lower figure, but it doesn't necessarily always offset the
That's right.
the payout.
That's right.
But it would be nice to just see what the policy is and if there's any changes that we need to make, maybe an undesignated fund of reserves for that. You can do it through that as well, George. So we can look at doing that, and Ms. Hawley will check into that.
But individual departments just shouldn't have to budget for that kind of uncertainty. It's, you know, that's an overall issue.
Tried to
You
do
know,
that on my second year as a commissioner, and there was
It is
no
tough on the budget because
support.
Well,
The,
at times, you know, we had a guy that was planning on retiring in 3 years and now he's saying 5, and we didn't expect Roger to retire this year at all. It was, health issues kind of came up, and it can be difficult sometimes to work with the budget with that.
sure, I agree.
It's worth looking into.
I have a
You,
question.
you just ended up being the beneficiary of this discussion.
We get off track, but it's usually a good track.
422, professional or contract services from
Yeah,
62 to
I have that
108,000.
Okay, we'll talk about that. That includes, we've done a couple things this year. We went with a new mapping, Apex, where we can draw our pictures, called Apex, to draw the homes, and there was quite a bit of cost associated with that. So that's a big part of it, and I'll break it down here for you. And there's other things that go with that. We now have mobile office capability, so the appraisers, when they're out in the field, they can take the tablet with them and do most of the work right there. And we needed Apex to make that work. The bonus with Apex is not only do we need that to work, but it works great in the office. It's heads and tails above what we had before. As far as the technology involved in it, makes it much easier, much quicker, much better to read, be easier for everyone. We can sketch in now, we can sketch in, for example, sketch in the basement, put another layer on top for the first floor, another layer on top of the second floor, and it calculates the square footage on each of those just from drawing it in there, and that includes the porches and everything. It's a really nice program. So just to break that down for you a little bit on what that number entails. Oh, and right off the top, I will mention that the 108,600 has been reduced to 101,100. So the 45,725 is now 38,225. And the reason for that is we're changing how we're gonna do the assessment notices. I think Shannon talked to you commissioners about that. And so they will now come on a full sheet of paper rather than the little cards which everybody loses and you can't read because the print's so small that, well, you just can't read them. So we'll be changing that, and this will allow us to every year change whatever we need to on the format. If we find something isn't working, we can change it. We thought that,
Sorry. Did you have any public input on that? I mean, did you take any public comment to see what the public thought about what those changes needed to be?
you know, we've had some complaints that have come in every year. We'll have somebody come in, you know, I really don't like the card, you can't tell what this is, you can't tell, you know, from that perspective we have. Just in complaints, we've had people coming in the door. We haven't, you know, taken a survey or anything like that. But, yes, we have had some feedback and we've had a lot of complaints about it
But
through the
just-
years.
But just a suggestion, because if you base it on complaint, you might have some really good ideas from people that, you know, didn't want to complain and sound bad, but they have some good ideas. Does that make sense?
Sure,
I don't know how you
absolutely.
get that done, but, or
Well,
how
we'll-
you want to get that done, but I think it would be beneficial. How about that?
We'll see what we can do on that. Deb's writing furiously. So anyway, that number, Shannon had thought it was gonna be $10,800. That come out to $3,000. So,
Nice.
you know, a little bit less there. But starting at the beginning, of that $38,000 there then, we had $1,600 is a difference in our Orion service contract, which is our appraisal software, which we do our appraisals with. 10,000 was, and I'm rounding these numbers, 10,000 annual maintenance, which is new, and that's for our Apex and mobile office. The Apex, of course, as I said, is the sketch module, and the mobile office will allow us to do more work in the field, thereby getting more done. Transfer costs from IT's budget. I don't know a lot about that, but apparently IT had some items that they were paying in their budget, and now it's in our budget. 3,700 USPAP increase. A lot of that is because of the new appraisers. USPAP is Uniform Standards of Professional Appraisal Practice. All appraisers, assessors, appraisers, everyone must take this. And you take the initial course, which is tested, and then every 2 years we have to go in for a refresher course, which is not tested. 3,900 Apex and Esri license one-time fee. The Esri, of course, is the mapping, and that was for the mobile office, so that's a one-time fee. 10,000, about 11,000, second half of mobile office license, a one-time fee. We paid half of that last year, and the other half is this year. And I already mentioned the 3,000, and then we just, you know, a small amount there, $400 membership dues for the South Dakota Assessors Association, and that's in reference to the new people as well. So that is what comprises the 38,000 there.
Thank you.
Should I just kind of keep on going down the line, or do you guys ask me questions on what's down the line there?
You just go ahead and we'll stop you if.
Okay, thank you. The repairs and maintenance, $1,100 increase there, that has to do with the Orion Apex interface annual maintenance and the tablets, the Esri maintenance. The supplies, $11,000. That's gonna include fuel increases, 5 tablets, we're purchasing 5 more tablets for the appraisers. Postage, ink cartridges, we had a little deal there where Deb was getting us a pretty good deal with the guy on ink cartridges. We found out they weren't working real well, so we had to switch to a different vendor, and we're getting, they weren't working, so we had to switch that. 427, travel and conference. That's gonna include additional meals and lodging, inflationary increases, and the new people again. So a lot of this is tied back to the new appraisers that we have. Utilities went down because we're out of that old building that was falling apart, which I see is all fixed up now and on the market. So that's all of the line items. Any questions on those?
Yeah, I do. Vehicles, 25,000. Are you planning on buying a new one, or are you just accumulating some money?
No, we actually bought 2 used ones last year rather than new. In the past, they'd purchased new ones. We bought 2 new ones, or excuse me, 2 used ones this past year, right, well, just this spring, because of the appraisers that we have. And we're trying to switch. We've got a lot of new people right now, so they are paired up quite a bit, working together. But our plan is to have them work individually as much as possible. And in doing so, of course, we need new vehicles because we have more appraisers and because we want them to be able to go out on their own. And, our goal is to look at a whole lot more properties so we don't have 20 years since the last appraisal.
Right, thanks.
Does the county have a policy on whether or not a department can pay people for using their own vehicle versus a county vehicle? And there is a choice?
Oh, I don't know if it's a choice. The choice is that if there's a county vehicle available, the employee has to take it. If there isn't, we pay them till you take their own.
But an individual department can use that discretion, in this case, to not to buy any vehicles and just pay the
Oh, I
folks for.
think, yeah, if they don't buy a vehicle, they don't have one available, so yeah.
Well, yeah.
But then you run into insurance issues personally and so on, where if it's owned by the county, we insure it.
Well, the mileage rates that we talked about, do they have any bearing on policy? Or they're
We
just
did
the
raise it, but we haven't raised it in years.
Well, but,
So-
Julie talked about it.
Yeah, but I mean,
did.
prior to this, it's been 37 cents for a long, long time.
Well, based on that policy, do the people that use their individual vehicles have to make sure they're insured and do all that stuff based
Yep.
on that mileage?
And
Is
I
there-
think-
Is there a process and procedure on that vehicle to be able to use it for mileage and get that money back, or there's none? It's just if you used a vehicle, it doesn't matter whose vehicle, you got here, did your job, and you should be getting paid for it.
It's an age-old question, which is the most beneficial to the, or budget-wise, and there's, it's subjective, and I guess if there isn't a policy, the individual departments can probably make that determination.
And just the efficiency of getting the job
Well,
done, too.
well,
We've
that-
got, if I'm an appraiser and I'm out there and I gotta use my own vehicle, of course, I'm putting a tremendous, especially in Pennington County, the way it's stretched out, putting a tremendous amount of miles on it every year. And one other county, and I don't know how many in the state do that. I know Brown County does that, and I know one of the appraisers real well that does that, and he went and bought an old beater vehicle just for work. And, he says, well, if I break down, I guess, it's county time, but he doesn't want to use his own decent vehicle for that purpose, just because it wears him out so fast.
So there is a policy that says this, or it just says in the policy, maybe Ms. Holly knows, that it just says you can use your vehicle, a vehicle, for mileage to get,
No, it doesn't
From-
say that.
what's it say?
It says if the county supplies a vehicle, you have to take it.
No, I'm talking about in general. Is there a
In
policy?
general, that's the
Yeah.
policy.
Yeah.
So
That's the policy.
I'm saying if you guys use yours, if the legislatures use theirs, is there a policy, or is it just the
For us-
policy
us
to
five?
use, theirs is different than ours?
Yeah.
Okay. And then we have,
Unless this commission wants to buy 5 cars, which I might vote for.
We go to conference or school and we take our own vehicles,
Such a good
we're on our own gas.
often
We get no
answer.
reimbursement for that,
I don't care.
You're funny.
and that does happen.
I might need one.
Okay, I have a question. Gordon, you probably can't answer this, but Holly maybe can help us. Looking at the group insurance between, I just randomly picked a few departments, there seems to be a considerable variation
Yep.
between departments as to the numbers. And, for example, Equalization went from 152,000 in 2014 to 218,000 in 2015. Are they, in fact, using that that increased amount of money, or is it speculation? But for the department to then jump another 66,000 when Health and Human Services jumps $6,333. It says to me something's
Goofy.
different. Is there a way to find that out? Is that a question you can pursue with Julie or the department heads or something?
This one, Gordon, does seem pretty high. Most departments budget for what they know, for the staff that they have, and then add, if they think they're gonna have a turnover or whatever, add what they feel is appropriate. So we can take a look at it to see what he's got in there.
Well, it might be if you can just take all the departments and just run a line on group insurance for each one, so we can see what's happening and or get some answers.
Or have them all refigure it.
Correct, and yes, that's, we've all heard of creative accounting, and it could be creative budgeting too. And I would strongly suggest, along the lines of a county line item for payout, it should be probably a line item for the county for insurance, because the variability is tremendous. And if I'm a department head, I'm looking at that and say, I'm gonna hit on the safe side. The next employee might need full coverage. The next one may not need any coverage. So that would be, I think, a county at large item. Take it away from the departments.
So Holly, would we, I'm just looking at the group insurance number, it's 4154151. Could you get a report that would have it broken down for each department? Because they all have to take the group insurance, that they have to use that number in the accounting system.
Right, we can run an
And that would be, okay.
IT went down $4,865.
What's that, sorry, I'm sorry.
IT went from 61,000 down to 57,000.
And again, might have been a change in personnel,
Sure.
family situations change. There has to be some flexibility in that line item.
Yeah, I understand
Don't
that.
know what's gonna happen.
Yeah, but this one just seemed
Pretty high.
pretty significant. But
And that highlights a problem. To me, it should be a county line item for insurance. Take it away from the departments, and then they don't have to sit there and figure out, well, this next employee, next new employee, is going to need no insurance or a whole bunch of insurance?
Or is it more because they're driving or doing the activity they're doing or something? It's not more because of that?
This health insurance.
This is just health and dental, right?
Right, this is just total benefits, not anything added because of liability on.
The departments shouldn't have to budget for that.
Comes out of work comp. That's the sum.
This is.
And maybe one of the things we can ask when the auditor comes in is why it's done that way? Because I think this is her setup, so she may have a reason, I don't know.
Right.
I don't know about that, but,
But you have to remember, it's going to be what it's going to be.
yeah.
At the end of the year, if they haven't spent this, it goes back into general fund. They don't cut themselves a check and walk home with it.
Right, it's
I hope.
undesignated.
So it is what it is. I mean, and what happens is it throws the budgeting off, and it throws what our share of, it throws that all off. So we probably are taxing more than we should be.
Right.
But it's not
If
like
it's-
it's wasted money either.
It's just a budgeting problem for the department head. They shouldn't have to have.
Well, but there is the other argument on this, George, in that if we want to really understand what it costs to run an auditor's office or emergency management or something as far as employees, if we don't have the insurance in the departments, then how do we know that? I think that might be part of it. I'm not sure. It's worth asking the auditor, but
Oh, by all means, I'm sure she'd have a response, but just on the face of it, you know, if I'm a department head, I'm gonna say, I'm gonna hire, if I'm being rewarded on my budget and control thereof, I'm gonna go out of my way to hire people that don't need any insurance. You know, and I shouldn't have to hire with that criteria in mind.
I don't think they
It's kinda like
do.
I gotta sell calves at a certain time to avoid IRS or to delay IRS, you know, that,
in a interview process, you don't ask them whether they're going to have family coverage or individual coverage. That's not how they're hired, so.
They're done through part-time and full-time though, so that does affect that. So they
That
are
part,
asked that.
you're
So it does
right.
come to
That part
fruition.
would.
Not if they're the other, so.
Okay, see what you started, Gordon?
We didn't even
It'll
talk
bring
about
up
your
all kinds
budget,
of fun
Gordon.
things.
And you're just standing there listening. So I
Are you
guess-
learning anything, Gordon?
Yeah, I'm learning a lot here.
Anyway.
How to figure out our budget.
Kind of sidetracked you.
Yeah.
Do you have anything more you want us to know?
I don't have anything more, and I guess, do you folks have anything more?
Does any of the commissioners have anything more they want Gordon to tell us?
That doesn't have to do with equalization? Good conversation, though, because it's a good learning experience for us that haven't been here on some of this stuff. So I appreciate it as a new commissioner, so thank you.
Well, you got by pretty easy.
And we'll figure out that
I was sweating
insurance.
bullets beforehand, if that's worth anything.
Well, you did good.
Thank
So
you.
how long do you think you have left, Deb?
Thank you, Deb.
Thanks for being back up.
Don't want to tell, huh?
Thank you.
Can you retire at my age?
budget. They're gonna be on the safe side, they won't overstate the budget.
This is,
See that, welcome to the crowd of worrying about that. I mean, that is a problem right now. That's a problem.
You do a great job, Deb and Gordon, thank you.
really listen to what they do. A lot of your
Says lunch break. Anybody
back
want to
at
take a
1.
lunch break?
We come back at 1, since we already did IT.
Well, we did IT, so is there any changes, Holly, in terms of Health and Human Services will be here at 1 o'clock?
That'd be good, because I'm gonna run
Okay.
home. Give my dog. That was a blessing.
Pretty damn reliable.
Okay.
I've spent a lot of money.
First hand?
Yep. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I used to, well, used to go down to, Brass Rail.
Does Eric know will probably be early too, Holly, or
What's that?
does Eric know will probably be early too?
Barry?
They,
How many
it's not
minutes
like
are
the
you going?
gas where they all change at the same time.
I'll speak quick.
You know what that is.
I can,
But no.
I mean,
it's
really,
very reliable. Of course you do.
10
And they
minutes
know,
would.
legislators knew it. When I testified.
I think you'll need
I
the whole
testified to
hour.
that shit.
No.
They just looked at you like, yeah, and what's your point?
No.
Well, my point is.
Depends how many
raising the
questions
quarter
I
doesn't
have,
make any difference.
otherwise
Guys, it
it'll
doesn't make
go
any difference. It makes the people who are
quick.
causing the problem pay some.
Well, it really helps to have this
But you're right,
here. I mean, I do have some questions, but
It's not gonna be. And the sales tax, I know where that's going. It's not a
Is
bad
there
idea.
something going on that I don't know about? You're the only one they've ever questioned like this ahead of time.
The sales tax, the state does it.
I don't, maybe. Well, and I saw when you gave me an hour, I thought,
Yeah.
well, this may not be good. but-
I gotta make stuff up, huh?
Yeah.